Torah is just a long string of numbers. Some say that it's a code sent to us from God.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's just good stuff. Check this out, okay? The word for the Garden of Eden, Kedem. Numerical translation, 144. Now the value of tree of knowledge, all right, in the garden, right? Eitz HaChaim, 233. 144, 233. And you can take those numbers. So
like the Fibonacci sequence?
Fibonacci
is an Italian mathematician in the 13th century. If you divide 144 into 233, the result approaches theta.
Theta?
Theta. The Greek symbol for golden ratio, golden spiral.
Wow. I never saw that before. That's like that series you find in nature? Like the face of a sunflower?
Wherever the spirals.
You see this math everywhere.
Welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true gnosis. And I am back from my trip to Greece. Been gone for a whole month. Haven't done any uploads besides when I was in Greece, where I did a couple uploads in there. But I'm here to talk about Greece right now, and then I have a guest coming on in about a half an hour, Mukunda Raghavan, who I've been on his channel before, and I told him he can come on my channel as well, so we're doing that now. He'll be here in about a half an hour or so. We're going to talk about his expertise. I think he's got a master's degree. Pretty sure that's what he said. He's got some degree, I'm pretty sure. But he's very knowledgeable in Vedic sources and Far Eastern, Indian, Hinduism sources. And so I want to get him on because I'm very fascinated by the overlap between these Indo-European descended religions, which is Greek, Roman, Indian, and even Persian religion. And I'm really fascinated by the overlap and how much they have in common and how much they oppose each other too, because they don't all agree, but they all have like very similar concepts, like the devas and the daimons. Are you can see how they have cognates going back to a similar root. But the way they approach these topics is very different. They're not one-to-one. Like you can't equate one god from Greeks to one god from India. It doesn't work. People try to do it all the time, and it looks silly because they're just not one-to-one comparisons. They're different. So I can't wait to have him on to talk about that. But anyways, Rami Hader dropping the 5. Thank you for the super chat. I'm going to appreciate the super chats extra more today because I haven't uploaded anything in a while. So, it's looking kind of scanty right now on my end. No, it's all good. I appreciate that, Rami. Good to see you. I'll try to look at the comments as much as I can, but ask me questions about Greece. So let me tell you what happened. I go to Athens, for the first week, we're pretty much, I got to get this. My dog is eating something she's not supposed to have. Give me one. All right, so we go to Greece. I get to Athens. For the first week, we stayed in the Athens area. So the first week we hit the Acropolis. We hit the Areopagus. We hit the Socrates jail. We hit the Lyceum. We hit all the spots that are in Athens. We hit every big spot you can think of. The Roman Agora, the Greek Agora, the Temple of Hera, the Temple of Nike, Athena, anything you could think of. We did, and Athens has in the city of Athens was done, including driving an hour to Sunion to capture the Temple of Poseidon. Actually, I have a video of that. I'll show you that right now. Just give you a quick little. I can't show you all my videos because they're all such huge files. I did everything in 4K. A lot of it was ProRes HQ. So unless if it's not uploaded onto my computer, and I try to play it through the actual card, it's just gonna lag like crazy. But I did end up. I was able to upload Sunion. So let me show you this. Let me show you where'd it go? Sunion. Oh, I just clicked out of it for some reason. Here we go. So this is like rough. This is not like edited yet, but this is like rough. Some of the shots that I took. Here we go. So this is a shot that I took when it was super windy. You can see there's like dirt going into my camera because it was so windy out. And it was like I was trying to get a good shot and it was just too windy. So
standing at the
this one
Temple
was
of
pretty good.
Poseidon at Cape Sunio, where the legend has it that Theseus returned in his ship, but failed to put up the white sails. So his father, Aegeus, jumped down to his death.
So I got to fix that. I have a lot of editing to do here. You can see me pausing and thinking about what I want to say. I'm going to fix all that and I'm going to edit that and fix it up. But I told the story about Sunion. Here's some more B-roll of Sunion as the Temple of Poseidon. This is like premium B-roll that I got. And then obviously the shots that I took. I took this out of on my camera. This is the sunset and Sunion. It's a time lapse video that I took. So, okay, that was that. What else did I do? So I went to Sunion, hit that, Temple Poseidon. The next day, we went to Delphi. Delphi was my favorite place in the entire trip. When I was in Delphi, I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. That was why I had to record, or I had to go live when I was there. I went live in Delphi with my iPhone and no good microphones because I was like, this is too beautiful. I got to jump on live. And that Delphi was just so mind-blowingly beautiful. Just like it's like you're out in the country, everything's green and luscious, the trees look amazing. The columns are beautiful. The way that the what is it called? It's like a bank. There was like a bank there. Treasury. The way the treasury was still preserved was so gorgeous. You could see where the tripod was, where the Pythia stood. And then when you go all the way up the hill, there's what I didn't even know existed. I knew about the Delphi theater, but I didn't know that when you keep going up Delphi, there's a whole stadium up there, a whole Olympic style stadium up there, gigantic stadium where they did like racing and stuff, horse racing. So I have all that footage. I'm gonna make a whole video on that. I have a whole documentary written about ancient Greece, about the takeover of Christianity, about the Renaissance, and all the misconceptions that we get from a lot of pop scholars like Tom Holland, for example, that portray this narrative that once upon a time the world was in darkness under paganism. They use the term paganism. I'm not even kidding. They actually use these words like it means something. Like paganism was like a giant religion that everyone believed in. We're all pagans. No one said that. So red flag number one. And then it's like, eventually Christianity came along and civilized everybody. And they brought us hospitals, and they brought us charity, and they brought us the equality of all people. And they saved the world from this horrible, dark, orgiastic, cannibalistic way of life that the Greeks had beforehand. So my documentary is kind of focused on like things that we take for granted that we still have part of our culture today, that the Mediterranean world, even beyond just Greece, talking about the whole Mediterranean world, understood these things. And a lot of it's common sense, of course, but like we can't just credit Christianity for these things if they were already being done before Christianity existed. So that's one of the main themes of the documentary. I have 6 people who I interviewed in Greece. One of them is Bexis, that you all know about, who I've showed you. I could play that clip actually real quick. And then, nice super chat just came in. Thank you, Andre, with the 100. Can you talk more about the vibes and impressions that you got when you were in Greece? This is a great question. Let me play this clip real quick of Bexis. And then then this is a good segue into your question. So just hold on to this thought for 1 second. I want to play this clip. Some of you might have saw this on my Twitter. I think I made a short out of this clip as well, but I'm going to just play it again for anyone who has not seen this. This is just a promo of the documentary, basically.
What is your message?
So let me play this again.
What is your message to the people out there that are trying to stop you?
I'll just tell you one thing, that gods decide. Because this land is watered with the blood of heroes, with the blood of Greeks who believed in these gods. We do not concern ourselves with you. Do not concern yourselves with us either.
Apollo and Dionysus are the same aspect. The two aspects of the same coin. Plutarch is not only a high priest of Apollo, but also of Dionysus, because the Apollonian and the Dionysian elements are completely connected. The serenity of Apollo ties with the whirl of Dionysus. Dionysus, at his highest point, becomes Apollo. The whirling with the maenads, with all this ecstasy, the ultimate point of ecstasy is the calmness. Thus, reaching calmness, Dionysus becomes Apollo, because Dionysus is the swirling of the universe, the conflict, the eternal dance of the universe. So we start from an eternal dance. That is why, in the Indian tradition, Dionysus is identified with Shiva, the dancing god. However, the dancer god, Shiva, can also have opposite effects. He can be the destroyer, just as Apollo can become a destroyer when hubris occurs.
All right, so that is coming very soon. The vibes that I got from people. So the vibes that I got is an interesting question, because I kind of went there hunting down the battle. I kind of went there hunting down the division between the people that are trying to bring back ancient Hellenism and the existing power structure, which is the Orthodox Church. And I went there thinking that I was going to get like this big war that's going on, and there's like this big battle happening, but really it wasn't really like that. They both sort of understood each other. So the Greeks, that are going back to ancient Hellenism, of course they reject Christianity, and of course they do. They agree with me on all my takes on this stuff, but they don't want Christianity. They're not trying to get Christianity to die or go away. They just want Christians to understand that they don't believe in it, and they're going to go back to what they believe in, which is ancient Hellenism or Platonism or Pythagoreanism, whatever it is. The church, on the other hand, there were some pretty dogmatic priests that were very much adamant about shutting down these people, but that they don't represent most of these people. Most of the people that I talked to were like, yeah, whatever, they're going to do it. I don't really care. It was interesting to see that. It was interesting to see that most people were not really like in the war mode. They were sort of more of like, they're united by they're all Greeks, and they're all united by that. They're all united by the land. So it was kind of a fascinating little twist that I caught on to while I was there. Was the city perfect though? I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to talk too much crap about it, but there were some parts of the town where were a little bit that were a little on the ghetto side, you know what I mean? Some drug use here and some prostitution there. And some, Greece has its problems. So does everywhere though. But the people were great. People were great. There's a lot of tourists in Athens, obviously, so you got to deal with the tourists. But then the locals were cool. I really did enjoy it. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. So let's keep going. Let's keep going. So what else did I see when I was there? Oh yeah, I talked to locals about what they thought about the revival of the Temple of Pan. First, let me show you the Temple of Pan. Here's some of the footage that I shot. It's actually not technically a temple. I'm not supposed to, it's technically a sanctuary / grotto. But, an ancient temple is just a place where you house the god. No one goes in the temple. So it's not really, it's kind of a gray area. But you're gonna hear about that in the documentary. This is part of the documentary. So this is some of the footage that I shot outside. I took this in 8 ProRes HQ in 4K. You can see it looks pretty nice. This was a kind of a, yeah, you can see I'm like trying to fix I'm like messing with settings right now. That's why it's all like that. I'm not even looking at my camera right now. There's the statue of Athena. They just got a new Apollo one that just got finished. That's coming to be there pretty soon. Let's go. That's the offering table in the middle. Not that right there with the plants on it. Let me see if I can. There's Athena. Beautiful, right? Let's keep going. There's a nice doggy. Dogs are the guardians of the temple. Of course, they got a bunch of dogs there, like cynics. A bunch of dogs hanging out. But look how beautiful this temple is. The design of it is just breathtaking. All of it's made out of marble too, and they're still building it. As you can see, it's not fully finished. The roof has a lot of work to do, but it's definitely coming along. And as far as the case goes, a lot of people, when I was on here last time, there were people in the chat saying, "Oh, he got shut down. It's all a joke. Nothing happens." No, they're wrong. He didn't get shut down. He's actually doing really good in his case. He's allowed to keep it. They just can't advertise it as like a public temple, which is not what they wanted to do anyway. It's private. This is all private property. So, and it's the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of the country in Arcadia. I don't know if you know where Arcadia is compared to Athens. It's all the way in the middle. Imagine if we're talking like New York. Athens is New York City. Arcadia would be like in the Catskills. Like if you understand New York well, you would know it's all the way in the country. It's nowhere near the big city. It's hours and hours away. And you have to drive through mountains and dirt roads to get here. Nobody's driving past this. Nobody can see this. It's not public. There's nothing public about this place at all. So the whole case is being dropped, basically. It was a big joke. And the only people were telling me, people who had no idea about this case that tried to tell me about this, they all these know-it-alls. I know everything about Greece. So look, I have a Greek name. Look at me. I know everything about Greece. Don't even live in Greece, by the way. Are trying to tell me all about this, and they knew all about this, and they're warning me, don't even go, you're going to waste your time. It's a joke. The whole thing's a joke. It's not even a temple, nothing serious there. They were wrong. In fact, the only people who were a joke were the people who actually filed charges on him. And I'm going to get into that in the documentary. There might have been a little bit of Christian spying going on. I think there's good evidence for it. Because I don't know how they found out about this place, other than like people who actually came here told on them. That's the only way you can figure. Like if you've been here, you would know why I'm saying that. Like there's no way anyone knows about this except for people who've been here and who have been invited. So there's a lot of sketchy shit going on with people going behind Bexis's back, and I saw it firsthand too. I saw the people trying to get in my way and tell me not to go interview him. He's bad. Don't interview him. All these red flags from these people, these neo-pagan people that are online. Weird. It's very strange, and I don't know. I'll get into it later as things unravel. But just know that when you hear these bickerings online in the comments on my videos, don't pay attention to it. It's a bunch of people who have no idea what they're talking about, and they're probably just jealous of the whole thing. because they want attention of, look, I'm Greek and I deserve to be taken serious because I'm Greek. So anyone who wants to talk about Greece needs to go through me. It's like, no, that's not how it works. I'm Italian. I don't claim to be like the guy you have to go through to learn about Roman Empire stuff. I'm also German. I don't think you have to come to me to learn about the Holy Roman Empire. So like, that's nonsense. I don't care who you are or what your last name is. If you don't know something, just say you don't know. So you don't have to pretend you know everything. So I've been noticing, and so I've been dealing with that a little bit too. People are just like jealous about this whole thing, trying to shut things down. It's kind of funny, actually. It kind of tells you the power of of this place, though, a little bit, because there's haters out there that are trying to like get in the middle of it. It's weird. It's like this spirit that's trying to like get involved in this and shut it down. It's very strange. But yeah, that's the temple. I took a lot of shots at the temple. This is just one video of many that I took. You'll see a lot. There's night shots that I took with lights. So exactly, Snappy. Bacchic madness. By the way, Snappy, let's do a stream pretty soon. Since I just got back, we should do a stream pretty soon. And we should talk about the temple that we want to build as well, because that I was talking to people in Greece about that. And one of my main issues of being an American who's not, I'm not ethnically Greek. I don't speak Greek fluently. And I talked to these people in Greece about this. And I said, and I brought up the Romans. Like, the Romans adopted Hellenism. The Syrians adopted Hellenism. Even the Egyptians adopted Hellenism. And I'm thinking, why can't Americans adopt Hellenism in their own rights? And like, our heroes don't have to be the Greek heroes. We don't have to have Agamemnon as one of our great heroes or whatever. I'm just making stuff up. We have our own heroes. We have our founding fathers. We have the World War II people. We make our own heroes, adopting through the Hellenistic worldview. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about this idea of bringing a sort of Hellenism. So you're adopting the tenets of Hellenism, but it's American. So if that, that's just something I'm throwing out there. But I think the model works, because a lot of the reason why I even posing this as an issue is because it's true that ancient pagan religions are really much centered on land, genetics, who you are, who your family is, where your ancestors are. This all matters. We can't just pretend this doesn't matter. It does. You go to Nordic pagans, and they honor their ancestors who are Nords. You go to African pagans, they honor their ancestors who are Africans, which puts America in a weird place, because obviously Native Americans have their tradition. But what about people who live in America who are four different? I'm Polish, German, Italian, and Polish, German, Italian. Like, what do you do? You feel like you have no place. I feel like Christianity, the only thing that is like, oh, you could be one of us, you could be a Christian, because we don't care what you are. We won't actually like. So it puts people in a weird place where they don't feel like they belong anywhere except for Christianity. And I'm trying to come out with a solution for people who are attracted spiritually to ancient Hellenism, people who are attracted to the idea of the muse, of music and inspiration and dancing and Bacchic mania, and they feel drawn to this stuff. And the answer I got from a lot of these people who are practitioners in Greece, I'm talking about 5-6 different people have all told me this, and you're going to see it in my interviews when I drop them out one by one. The first one's already finished. It's going to be out within 20, not tomorrow, the next day, so the 14th. My first interview will drop. Like Alexandro Ducios. That's my first person. That's the first interview that I'm dropping. And he was one of the people who told me this, is that a lot of times Hellenism isn't about your genetics. It's about sometimes you're spiritually connected to something. It just calls you. And I think that's true. I think people who are attracted to this sort of Greco-Roman religion, polytheism, because they like the idea of there not being a strict dogma that you have to believe in or else. But they also like the idea of having some sort of structure to follow, and also the idea that things in nature are deified as divine, not just nature, but also like psychology. So like eros is a psychological state of love. People, there's something about that feels divine, and people want to express that. It's very artistic if you think about it. It's very artistic. It's very musical. It's very, and I think that's what we're getting at when we talk about Hellenism and we talk about ancient Greek religion and Greco-Roman stuff. So, yeah, that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Know thyself, non-dogmatic spirituality centered on the study of humanity. Exactly. That's what it is. It's about learning about yourself, learning about what virtue is, learning about having good principles to stand on, being good. What is the good? Defining the good, having some sort of objective, I guess, definition of what good is. I think that's a good thing to do. I think people should be trying to figure those things out. But also not having this idea that, oh, by the way, 2,000 years ago, there was a guy who did X, Y, and Z. And these are all things that you're never going to see in your lifetime. They're all miracles. If you don't believe that that happened, we have a place for you in the fiery pits of hell. So you have to deny everything that you think is real in this realm and accept something that happened 2,000 years ago, or else you're going to go to, like, that to me is nonsense. So I don't know. I think people are starting to wake up to that. I think people are starting to get more and more interested in different kinds of religions, especially ancient ones. I think New Age can only go so far. People get burnt out by it. It's just a little chaotic, to my opinion. I'm willing to learn more about it, but I think people are drawn to ancient traditions that were already sort of established by very, very smart people, like the Greek philosophers and the Roman, like Cicero, and the Eleusinian mysteries and the Cabirion mysteries and Samothracian mysteries and Egypt and, you know, Hermetic mysteries. People are interested in those things because they were established and they inspire Christianity in so many ways. People want to go to the real stuff. They don't want to go to the knockoff anymore. People, once you realize that Christianity is the knockoff, all bets are off at that point. Mythvision Podcast. If you're not subscribed, who are you? Super chat from my brother Neil. May the brothel thrive forever. Absolutely. Absolutely. May the brothel live on. Yeah, I agree. Let's see what else we got. Mushroom isn't too dry for mushrooms. I tried 1 year and was able to, but it's very difficult. Oh, some mushroom talk going on in the chat. I respect it. I respect it. We can read the text ourselves. The New Age is way too capitalistic now. We can go to what had inspired them always. I noticed that myself about the New Age. It's like a lot of like, yeah, I don't want to be rude, but like, yeah, I agree with what you said there. Oh, is the mic cutting in and out? Is that really happening? Is anyone else noticing that? Let me know if you guys notice the mic cutting in and out. Please let me know that. I would love to know. Because I can hear it on my end. It sounds pretty decent on my end. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I can see it on my end. Looks like it's going pretty good. But make sure you let me know if that's actually going on. It's the internet connection. Is it my internet? It's a connection thing. Huh. I hope it's not my internet. That would suck. Let me just see if I'm going to put it on my phone and see what's going on. So, all right. Audio's current in and out, and your mic mixer connections. Yeah, everything looks good on my end. Maybe it's just current in and out. Your mic mixer connections. Yeah, everything looks good on my end. Maybe it's just I'm not seeing anything on my end. But okay, I'll keep going. Let's see if anyone else sees it. So, last thing before Mukunda gets here, I want to play a couple more clips. So here's another person who I pulled up from the side of the street, And I wanted to ask him point blank, what do you think about this revival of ancient Hellenism, of ancient polytheism? And I want to, because this guy was a Christian. I asked him that before we started. And I just wanted to know, as a Christian, what do you think about this? And so here's what he said. By the way, this is all dubbed over. We were speaking in Greek. He was speaking in Greek. I was asking the question. Somebody would ask it back, and he responded all in Greek, and I dubbed it over. So this is all dubbed over for you guys. So is the last clip, by the way. What is your thoughts on the in the land of Pan here in Arcadia, written about by the ancient Greeks? What is your thoughts about the revival of ancient Greek religion that from a time before Christianity?
This revival doesn't bother me at all. And beyond that, after how many years have passed? After 2,500 years. The process of the temple, the god, with the god Pan and with Zeus was revived again. I personally liked it, and from what I hear around our area, it is very good. It took development in some way in the area. Foreigners came, and I think that next time there will be quite a few, even from other areas, from more distant areas of Greece.
And what are the locals around here? What's the sense of their approval or disapproval? What do the locals here think about this?
Yeah, whenever I turn and look in the area, it's clear we don't all agree 100%, but I think the majority do agree. Most of them agree.
Thank you. Gary Stoll. And that was kind of the sense I got from people, was like, yeah, a lot of people are really resisting this stuff. A lot of people are pretty pissed off, actually. They're pretty like, no. And so there people were blaming the hurricanes that were happening. They were blaming it on Pan, and there was like a lot of weird shit like that going on. But most people were just understandable, and they just kind of just were like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. I'm a Christian. They can do what they want. So there's sort of like a very liberal mindset, which is good. I think people should be able to practice what they believe in. And let's see. I think I have one more clip. Oh, I'll just real quick before I bring Mukunda up. I just want to sort of skim through my video, or some of the footage that I got from Eleusis real quick, and then that right there, just to show you. This is actually, I'm going to drop a video in 2 days. It's going to talk about this with somebody I was there with, who took me on. He was kind of a tour guide. This guy right here, you see this guy. This is Alexandro Ducios, and he brought me on he showed me around Eleusis. I would not have, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't been able to find all these things very quickly like he was able to show me. He knows the place like it's his own backyard. For example, he shows me right off the bat right here the torches. See the torches? And then look at this right here. That's Demeter's grain. It represents the Kukion. Very ancient sacred symbol of Demeter from the mysteries. Let's see. So look, I got some good shots of that. And then you can see like there's the window and there's the basket. That's where so anyone who reads sources on Eleusis right now is like getting chills. They're going, oh my God, it's right there. It's right there. Because it's that crazy. This is what all the sources talk about. Putting the sacred phallus back into the basket. You take it out of the basket, you say the magic words, you get initiated, you put it back in the basket. That's the basket right there. So that's fast. Look at, then you got the pot of the Kukeon. That's where the Kukeon would be in. And then the torches for Lucifer, for Phosphorus. So, you know, you brandish two torches, and you cry out Yakos, the light bearer of the nocturnal mysteries. So let's see. You see, I got a whole bunch of footage of me like kind of scanning over these Greek, and a lot of this stuff, if you look at it, is talking about the Eumolpid clan, Eumolpidi clan in Greek, Eumolpidae. And look at it, you can see it right there on the top. Epsilon, Upsilon, and Malpidae, which is if you know who this is the family that ruled Eleusis and it was like the lead. So if you know the Bible well, you know who the Levites are. The Levites are the ruling class of the temple. The Levites are like the temple priesthood family of the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, in Eleusis, it's the Eumolpid clan. that was like analogous to the Levites. They were that ruling clan, and their ancestors and descendants was always in charge of whoever the Hierophant was. So the Hierophant, which means like high priest, or like it means like holy phantom, like Holy Spirit, actually, in a weird way. And like the Hierophant is like the high priest. It's like the Pope of the Eleusinian mysteries, if you will, just to use an analogy. And they sit in the they're the only person that's allowed to sit on the throne in the inner sanctum of the Holy of Holies that's in the temple of Demeter and Iacchus, and Persephone. It's those three. Demeter, that's the mother, the Kori, the maiden, and then the divine child, Iacchus. It's like almost like a trinity. Anyways, so I got a lot of this footage of, I took everything you could think of in Eleusis, everything. Just I went through the whole entire place, got everything. Anacteron, see that? I got everything. I even got the cave of Persephone. I think it's towards the end where I show that again. I have 2 videos of that. Maybe it's in a different video. But there's a cave. Let's see if I got it. Maybe it's in this one. It's in the other video that oh, here it is. Okay, see this? That is right there. This is the cave of Persephone. This was the entrance to Hades. And by the way, me and Stephen, when we went inside there, me, Stephen, and Alexandros, we went inside here. You can't see it in this video. Let's see if I can fast. No, it's not in this video. It's not in this video. The other video I shot, there's somebody left an offering in there for Persephone. They left a pomegranate in the cave, and there was like other kind of fruits in there and little like offerings they left. But I saw the pomegranate in the cave, and I just thought to myself, this place is not dead. People are still coming here in 2025 and giving offerings to the Kori in Eleusis in 2025. And that just gave me so much hope for this stuff that, yeah. So with that being said, let me just finish. I got one more super chat, I think. Let me just make sure I don't miss any super chats. Oh, here we got a couple of them. Okay. Let me just hit these super chats, and then I bring Mukunda on. So we have welcome back, and then we have can you talk more about the vibes? I already answered that one. Here we go. Nothing more with the 499 says, do you have a reading list syllabus that tracks Greco-Roman pagan origins of Judeo-Christianity that you can discuss in your videos? A reading list syllabus that tracks Greco-Roman pagan origins of Judeo-Christianity. This is what I would do. I can't give you a full list right now, but I can tell you where to start. Get this Old Testament pseudepigrapha, and especially volume 2. If you can get both volumes, get it. These are very expensive, but volume 2 has the whole Orphica Oh, I just ripped my page. Volume 2 has the whole Orphica section in here. These are Jewish Orphics living in Alexandria between the 3rd century BC and the 1st century AD. And it's not just Orphica fragments. You have Aristobulus, who thought Moses was the same as Musaeus. Demetrius the chronographer. You have Eupolemus. You have Cleodemus Malchus, 1st century BC. Artapanus, 3rd century BC. You have fragments of Artapanus. You have Pseudo-Hecataeus, Hecataeus of Abdera. These are Greek writers from the 3rd century to the 1st century, 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD, who are writing in Greek, and they're sort of mixing and playing around with Jewish and pagan sources as all one tradition. They're obviously they're Platonists and Pythagoreans, and Orphics, but they're following, and Stoics too. And those all get mixed together. That's what Middle Platonism is. All those things get mixed together by the 1st century. So this is what I would start with, but also get the Greek magical papyri, nothing more. Even maybe before you even get this, The Greek magical papyri is the answer to your question. That's where you're going to find the Greco-Roman pagan origins. You're going to find some nice little overlap there. And the Sibylline oracles. That's another source. Sibylline oracles. Oh, by the way, the Sibylline oracles are in here. So you just get this. You get the Sibylline oracles with it. Let me just make sure that the Sibylline oracles is not in the first edition. And I think it is. Yeah, so you're going to want to get both editions. You're going to want to get both these editions, first and second, because the Sibylline oracles are in here, and the Orphica is in here. And everything you just answer, all your questions are going to be found in there. And this is all scholarly. This is not like this is all high-level scholarly shit right here. So thank you for that. Good question, by the way. Thank you for that. Greek informant in the house. Enjoyed watching your journey. Thoughts on Eleusis. Also thoughts on Greek Orthodox Pasca. Procession of the Holy Fire. This is a big question, and this is all getting addressed in my documentary, because I actually think there's some overlap between the Holy Fire at the Pasca and the lighting of the torches in the mysteries, and also even the Olympic flame. The Olympic flame ceremony, they would go to Olympus, they would light the flame, and they would bring it to other cities. This is what they do at the Pasca. In Jerusalem on the Pasca, they light the fire, and then all the priests that from other cities that go there, they light their torches and they bring them to Athens, and they bring them to Alexandria, and they bring them to Syria, and they bring them to here, and they bring them to there, and they all bring their. So I actually have it right in front of me, right here. Look at this. This is literally from this year's Pasca. This is wax that fell from the flame when the torches were being lit. So a Christian, this is a valuable thing to a Christian right here. This is the Pasca wax. I have it right here. The priest gave it to me. So that you're going to stay tuned for that question. I talked to priests, I talked to pagans about all this stuff, and it's all going to come together. And the last super chat for now, and I appreciate the super chats, keep bringing them in. If you want, for the next segment, ask away about anything Vedic, anything related to the Vedas, the Mahabharata, the Dhammapada, all that Vedic stuff, because Mukunda is going to be here for that in about 5 seconds after I answer this question. You said you were a pagan now, no? What exactly made that click for you? I often feel stuck between Christian Platonism and pagan Platonism. So I didn't want to call myself a pagan because I felt like a LARPer. I feel like I don't have a priest that I go to. I don't have a temple that I go to. I don't even know if I believe it, but I have this. I know what I do believe, and I do believe in divine inspiration from the muse. And so what does that make me, a pagan? Do I believe in paganism, but I'm not really a practicing pagan? What does that mean? That's sort of what I went to go explore on my trip. And at the end of the day, I think most people would say, yeah, you're a pagan. You know, you're not like a dog. I don't have like a specific like church, like a priest and an ecclesia that I have, but I'm working on that. I actually think that that's going to change in the future with people here that I'm talking to about actually doing something, building a temple and offering people an opportunity to have something that's not the same, not Christianity, but not also atheism. That's my goal. That's my life, my life's work. That's what I'm working on. So yes, the answer to that question is yes. I don't think I'm a LARPer. I'm honest about where I'm at, though. That's it. That's as much as I can say. So I appreciate that question. But without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Mukunda is in the house. What's going on, man? I can't hear you. Are you plugged in? Let me just make sure I got your it might be on my end, so don't it might be on my end. Let me just make sure. Oh, here we go. Go ahead, talk. No? Let's see. I don't hear you yet. So let me just edit mic settings. Is your mic
better?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, whatever you just did.
All right. Yeah,
Okay.
I just on my end. I'm using Mac mic outside. I guess it wasn't working. How are you,
Oh,
dude?
good.
I see your trip to Greece. Looks awesome.
Yeah, it was a good time, and I have a lot to say on it. It's not. I'm not even 10% done with editing, or not even editing, getting the footage ready to edit. Like I'm still in the process of going through all the footage and finding what I want to use and how I'm going to use it. It's going to be a month or two before I really start putting out good content. Like I have a video that's done. It's one of the 6 interviews that I did while I was in Greece. Done. That'll be out in the next day or two. But as far as the documentary that I'm working on, it might be a month before that comes out. I'm talking like a good month.
Yeah, dude. Like when I went to Greece in like 2020 for like 3 weeks, it was one of the most beautiful spots. I went to the temples and the Acropolis, and you could feel the ancient Indo-European like blood flowing through there, man. And it's similarly what you feel when you go to like parts of like India. You go to these temples, or you go to Turkey. You because there's still some of that there, and Rome and all that. It's amazing, frankly.
Yeah, and I was really an experience. I'm definitely going to go back, probably within a year. Probably
you should.
Yeah, I felt a connection to the people there, and I have some good connections there now. Some family that I consider family now. People who I stayed with.
Were you able to read the inscriptions in Greek?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I can read inscriptions. I mean, obviously, I can't read it fluently. I have to like go through it really slowly and sometimes look stuff up. But I can read it. I can read through it.
Yeah. But that's such an awesome skill to have, though. It is. Just to recognize those characters, those letters, put those together. Obviously, you have to do declensions later, but like that's pretty cool.
Believe it or not, I actually was when I was in Israel 3 years ago. I was actually able to read the Hebrew there. I actually got myself to a point where I can actually read enough Hebrew that I can make out what the words are saying, and then if I have to look stuff up, I do. But it was funny because Dr. James Tabor, I don't know if he just didn't believe me or if he was just kind of seeing where I was at. He would often pull me aside and go, "What does that say?" And I would read it and go, "Shit, you really could read it." It was like 3 times where he did. I got one of them on video too. Derek was filming, and he was like, "We were in Masada."
Yeah.
He was like, "What does that say?" And I was like, "Oh, it says," and I forgot what it said now, but at the time I read it, and he was like, "Holy shit, that's," because he's like, "This is Paleo Hebrew," or he's like, "This is different." It was like not Paleo Hebrew, but it was like a harder. The Hebrew that they were using in that particular instance was very hard to read. He was basically saying,
right.
So I was like, I don't know. It was pretty funny, but yeah, the same for Greek. I can read it, but it doesn't mean I'm an expert. I can read it fluently or understand. When they start speaking modern Greek, I can't understand them.
Yeah, that's a whole other it's a whole other mess. So like it's a lot of like, for example, in India, a lot of people speak Hindi or like some sort of what they call like Avadi or Braj Bhasha, but they won't understand Sanskrit, right? Because they'll pick up words, but you can't understand what the context of anything is.
That might be the best comparison to ancient Greek and modern Greek would be Sanskrit and Hindi, because it's the same alphabet, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Same alphabet. It looks the same, but you're going to have different grammar. You're going to have a lot of different, even vocab is going to be different.
Yeah.
Ancient Greek.
Like for example, in Vedic Sanskrit, the classical Sanskrit, it doesn't matter where you put the words, right? You could put the subject in front or the last or the middle. The verb can be in front. It doesn't matter. But they do it sometimes subject, object, predicate just for uniformity in terms of some of the writings. But it's pretty cool that way. Like especially when you're not used to that in modern languages, where everything is like subject, object, predicate, and then like John ran over there, or whatever it is, right? It's very structured. At least in the form, but in Vedic it's not, and classical Sanskrit it's not.
I will say this about myself though, and I was actually surprised at myself when this happened. When I was interviewing people, the ones who did it in English, we were just doing English because they could speak English. So like Michael from Ancient Greek Revisited, that's an English one. There's no dubs needed. Same with Alexandro Ducios. That's why that one's coming out first, because he spoke in English. So I was able to edit that up quickly. But the other people who I talked to in Greek, Bexis and two other people who I talked to in Greek, when they were answering my questions and I was listening to them speak in Greek, I was picking up enough words that I was able to follow up questions without even having to hear a translation. So the girl that was the high priestess who was there, she was supposed to translate for Bexis.
Yeah.
Bexis started answering my question, and I heard a few. I was hearing what he was saying. I could barely make out what he was saying, but it was enough that I gave a follow-up question without even her having to translate. And she was like, "Did you understand that?" She's really excited to me. She goes, "You understood that?" I was like, "Yeah, I understood it. I understood most of it." And she goes, "Because your follow-up question was like as if you heard it." So
Right.
there was a couple times where I'm listening to him in Greek, and I'm making out the nouns, and I'm making out some of the things that he's saying. Oh, he mentioned, I heard him say Artemis. I heard him say that, and I was able to guess what his answer was based on the little bit of information that I got.
You know, someone just in the chat brought up Farsi, which is actually, I mean, just on a side note, it's very interesting because it's one of the few times where you find two Indo-Aryan languages separated by thousands of years coming back together and mixing it to form a new language, right? So Dardic languages are, Indo-Iranian, but they're a particular branch. And then you have Indo-Aryan, which would be like Sanskrit. So Sanskrit creates some sort of older version of what they call Apabhramsha language of like say precursor to Hindi. And Hindi is a merger between the Farsi and Apabhramsha together forms Hindi. So like the structures are still like Indo-Aryan in terms of Indic languages, but they have a lot of words coming from Indo-Iranian languages. It's really, really cool.
That is kind of fascinating. Because what blows my mind is that is just Indo-European languages in general, how far they spread.
Oh yeah.
Nothing like it. Because you have the Afro-Asiatic languages, which spread pretty far. You have, most of obviously Africa, and then the Sinai region up into Judea, and then they get into Babylon, and they sort of but the Indo-European languages are like all the way from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to India and into we're a little bit even beyond India. And so I think there's even some Philippine places where they have derivatives of Indo-European Sanskrit, right?
Well, I mean, so Southeast Asia was deeply influenced by, let's say, migrations from roughly around the turn of the millennia. So around the time of Christ, maybe a little before, you have a lot of migrations to Southeast Asia. So in Vietnam, the Champu Kingdom, you have in Thailand, Sumatra, all these places, including the Philippines. Eventually, Philippines was probably like something like 8th or 9th century. They were very much inundated with Hinduism and Buddhism. And both those languages at that time were using Sanskrit as the lingua franca of the liturgical class or the high society. So those words got melded into the very text, the very language that they spoke. But the script, interesting enough, is actually Tamil script. It's a derivative of the Dravidian language, the script. So they took the script of the Dravidian languages and reformed them, but the overarching nouns, grammar is not the grammar, but the vocabulary is from Sanskrit.
Now, when you say Dravidian, is that the pre Indo-European languages? Is that what that is? What does that mean?
So this is where it gets complex, right? So in India, there are two major family languages. There is the Indo-European language, or Indo-Aryan specifically, that descends from Sanskrit, and other related languages there. And then you have the Dravidian languages, which will be things in modern India. It's like Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, and Telugu. So those four languages are Dravidian languages. We don't know how old they are. There's a lot of speculation that they might be the part of the Indo-Saraswati or the Harappan civilization. There's not much evidence to that either way, but I think it's a good assumption to say they're at least 1000 BCE onwards. The oldest Tamil language text you have, for example, coming from the Sangam period, which roughly around the 6th century BCE, have already showed deep influence of Sanskrit. So in that, you could tell there was probably interaction with them for a long period of time before that.
Wow.
And they're very different languages, by the way. But later later Tamil languages built their grammatical structure or study of grammar around the Paninian Sanskrit tradition.
So how much of Hinduism, I guess, the broader Vedic religion, are can you separate what's Indo-European from what's actually like native Indian stuff? Is that even possible?
So that's interesting because so first let's address the first part, right? Like the Rig Veda is Indian. It was created in India. There's no sense of the Rig Veda that they came from somewhere else. Now they did come from somewhere else, but there's no sense of the Rig Veda that they're anywhere outside of India. So the Rig Veda as a text is Indian text now, or tradition. Now, obviously, it's connected to the Indo-European languages and the Indo-European like mythology. But let's put it this way: the Vedic corpus is so vast that when they integrate with other cultures, they kind of absorb them in, and then they connect those particular deities that they absorb into the Vedic pantheon or connected to Vedic deities. So it's almost so at some level you can't differentiate because that deity becomes so subsumed with both the Vedic element and non-Vedic element. It's tough to demarcate. People try to do that. For example, let's use an example like the god of war in the Vedic tradition is Skanda, or also named Kumara, right? He's Kartikeya as another name for him, right? But he's in the south called Murugan, which means the red one. And he has different, like in the north, he's a bachelor. He has no family. He's not married. But in the south, he's married. He's got 2 wives. And so you have different traditions that connect. So some people argue that the deity Murugan became merged with the deity Skanda and became one deity. Really? And they have different traditions.
Morgan, isn't that an Irish deity?
Murugan. So in Tamil you say Murugan. It's not Indo-European, so you can't make those connections.
Okay, I was wondering if there was some sort of overlap there. Yeah.
I think you're talking about the Morgan, which is the O sound versus the U.
Okay. I got you. Morgan versus Morgan. Got it.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's a good super chat from Snappy from Drawing Down the Stars. Check out this channel and subscribe if you're watching this. This is a great channel. You'll see me on there from time to time. I noticed deep parallels between the Kashmir Saivism of
Abhinavagupta. Yeah.
Is qualified non-dualism and much of the Neoplatonism of Greece. Interesting. Also in the myths of Siva Parvati marriage and the abduction of the Kori. Thoughts?
Interesting. So Kashmir Saivism. So I mean, this is where it gets complex when you talk about things like Neoplatonism, right? So even Proclus and Plotinus in their writings talk about potentially that some of their knowledge came from the East. They sometimes attribute it to the Egyptians, and other times they attribute it to the Indians. Because by the time you get to Proclus and Plotinus, they've already interacted deeply with the Indian world. Right. So what I would say to this is, okay, so I think Neoplatonism obviously derives from Platonic thought of forms and the realm of ideas, but it's mixed with what I would think, this is my hypothesis, I'm not sure it's true, is the Sankhya categories. So within the Vedic tradition, there's this philosophy called Sankhya. Sankhya means counting. So counting, basically what they postulate is there's 25 what they call tattvas, or ontological realities, of which 23 of them are derived from one of them, and one sits outside of them completely. So the idea of evolution from the one to the many came from the Sankhyan tradition, and I think it got absorbed into Neoplatonic tradition later on. So that's just my hypothesis. So Kashmir Shaivism, which is a tantric tradition, it's a tantric tradition. So they have a much more complex system. From 25, they have something like 38 categories. And those categories include things like, foundational nature, prakriti, mula prakriti, to things like mahat, which is ego, ahankar, all these like evolutes. So almost connect. You can find the kind of the correlation between like the nous, the universal soul, the world mind. It's very similar. So you'll have like from the mahat to like buddhi. So mahat is going to be like what you would call the greatness, whatever. And then buddhi is ahankara comes from that, which is ego. From ego comes buddhi, which is intellect. And then from intellect comes manas, which is mind, and then so on and so forth. So this tradition is super old. And some people put it somewhere in the at least 7th, 8th century BCE. And it's found in Mahabharata. It's found in other later traditions too. So Krishna has an entire section in the Gita called the Sankhya Yoga, which he talks about this. So yeah, there is definitely a connection between the two. I think scholars are now parsing it more and trying to figure out those interactions, but it's pretty fascinating actually.
And I think Snappy's spot on about Neoplatonism overlapping in Shaivism, because they both have this transcendent one, that manifests itself in many. So it's not like one God that it's all there is, but like it's many gods, but they're all transcending this one. There's it's like this sort of concept, and then in the Rig Veda you get this creation myth. I've only read the translation in English, so maybe you can give me some thoughts on this, where it actually says like the one created the world from nothing. So you're like, wait a minute, I thought creation ex nihilo is like a 3rd century AD doctrine that comes from Christians, but the whole time the Rig Veda has its own version of this. What is your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I don't think the Rig Veda has a concept of creation ex nihilo. Like there's 2 primary creation myths. One is called the Nasadiya Sukta, which Nasat Adiyot, and then it goes on and it talks about the nature that the universe beginning was neither being or not being. Now, there's deep
here it is right here
interpretations on this, right? What Sat and Asat mean, but neither of those concepts. Is this Nasadiya Suktam?
Yeah, this is the one you're talking about.
Yeah, so Nasat Adiya Suktam, right? So it is Nasat Aso no Sad Asat Tadami. So this is essentially giving you a potential creation myth, because it's not even talking about creation per se. It's really talking about the speculation of how we can know. So this is written by or the person that's supposed to have come up with this mantra, I believe, is Dirghatamas, which is Rishi. And in this, he's trying to speculate on the nature of knowledge, how we can know through any means of whether this occurred or not. Because that's how it ends at the end, right? It ends by saying maybe the gods know, or the gods do not know, but maybe he knows or he does not, right?
Yeah.
So this is a speculative kind of poetic flourish. Interesting enough, following from this, right? This is Mandala 10 of the Rig Veda.
Yeah, it's not the beginning of the Rig Veda. It's another thing I want to point out. This is not off the rip. This is not start with this. You have to really find this in the Rig Veda.
So this is in Mandala 10. I think it's something like verse 190 or something. And then but immediately following that, not immediately, but shortly after, there's the creation hymn of the Rig Veda called the Purusha Suktam.
Right.
And it starts like Sahasra Shira Shah Purusha, Sahasraksha, Sahasrabhat, Sabubin, Vishwato, Vitva, Atidit, Shangulam. So this idea that there's that Purusha, this Purusha, this being with infinite eyes, Sahasra Shira Shah, with 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 arms. From himself, he creates all existence. So he sacrifices himself to himself. And in that sacrifice, all things occur.
Right. And the reason why I even sort of like hinted at creation ex nihilo, because if you actually, and this is debated by scholars, most scholars would agree with you and say, nah, I don't know. But there are some, I've read them myself, I've read the articles, where there are legitimate arguments that the first creation ex nihilo myth is right here. And the reason why, where it says then even non-existence was not there. I don't know what how they're translating that. Nor existence. There was no air, nor space. What covered it? Cosmic fluid in depths unfathomed. There was neither death nor immortality. And then it says the one. It doesn't even give you a name. So talk about Platonism. I wouldn't be surprised if the Platonism knew about this. The Platonists knew about this. Anyway, it says the one breathed windlessly and self-sustaining. There was the one then, and there was no other. And then in the first, there was only darkness, wrapped in darkness, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, the one which came to be enclosed in nothing. Now, what's that? I don't know. Maybe you can tell me what word they're translating from nothing. Is this a bad translation? Maybe I'm looking at. What do you think here?
So Shalilam Sarvam Idam. No, that's so Aprakatam That word would mean non-created. It doesn't actually mean nothing.
Oh, okay. So that's now you see where I'm coming from. When I read this in English, and this is why people need to when you're reading something in English, you got to be careful. You got to find someone like I'm talking to you right now, and you got to go. Wait a minute, what I'm reading sounds like creation ex nihilo. Why isn't? And you pointed out, well, this word doesn't necessarily mean nothing. So okay, and then I understand why people push against this. That's all I'm saying. People need to start, whether it's Greek, whether it's Latin, whether it's whatever. If you read an English translation, make sure you put it up against someone who knows what they're doing, and then you get a better understanding. You can better, you know what I mean? Anyways.
Yeah. So the word like sat and asat mean different things in different contexts. In this context, sat means that which exists in the universe, or the universe existing, it being itself. Asat means that which is not being, which can be a thing like a word before the word is spoken. So when the word is spoken, it becomes into being. Before it's spoken, it's non-being. So in the sense of that similar sense of being and non-being, it's not making ontological claims about the nature of the universe. And that's part of the thing about this creation hymn. It's actually saying the ontological, epistemological, like, truths that you believe, maybe they're not known in rational means. You can't know them through rational means.
That sounds very Platonist right there.
Yeah.
And just to finish off on what Snappy was saying, Megasthenes Indica, this guy traveled to India with Alexander the Great, and he wrote this down. And he writes a lot about India, and he writes about this god who he compares with Dionysus. He doesn't say Shiva.
Yeah.
But scholars have pointed out he's talking about Shiva. Like, he doesn't say Shiva, but he says they worship Dionysus and they do this and they do this. When he says Dionysus, he doesn't mean Dionysus, he means Shiva.
Well, see, interesting. It could be. So this is also where I think it's interesting, because it could be Shiva, or it could be, there are other traditions that exist at the same time. And one of those traditions is called the Pancharattra tradition. And that tradition, Heliodorus talks about a century or two later, a little less than that, in which they're basically Krishna. There's four major deities: Vasudeva, which is Krishna; Pradyumna, Sankarsana, and Aniruddha. Sankarsana is actually very similar to Dionysus.
Wow.
So Sankarsana means together. Karshana is doing or plowing. He's a god of the plow, god of the harvest, god of drinking.
Very Dionysian. Yeah.
So there's elements of that.
The god Soma might be Dionysus. Or
might be, yeah. But
like
Soma's
I said earlier before you got here, you cannot make one-to-one comparisons.
No,
you can map them on a little bit, but you have to remember these are separate deities. They're not one-to-one. They're not. Dionysus does not equal Shiva.
No.
This is a lot in common with Shiva. It does not equal Shiva. You got to remember there are different traditions, different gods, different everything. But that title Mahadeva, I put it on the thumbnail.
Yeah.
Really stands out to me because it means like great deva, right?
Yeah.
Mahadeva. Well, that one of the countless epithets that you get from Dionysus, not just Dionysus, Osiris is Agathos Daimon, great daemon.
Yeah.
So, or good daemon, good, great. Agathos means good, I guess. But like you can see, there's sort of like this idea of this great daemon, and I can see Shiva, even Krishna, sort of having this thing in common with the great daemon.
So there's multiple words for that, right? So there's Deva refers to a class of beings that can also be used synonymously with God generally, right? But there's also another word called Ishvara. So they will use the term Maheshwara, Maha plus Ishvara, there you get euphonic combination because of Maheshwara. So that's a name for Shiva. He's also called Parameshwara, which means the supreme Lord. So there's many words for deity. Like, for example, like, this is interesting enough. In Slavic, the word for God is Bog, right? And that's connected to the Indo-European Bog, which is also connected to Sanskrit Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is another word for God, but means Bhaga is portion or aspect. So he who possesses all portions or aspects is known as Bhagavan. So similarly, you'll find those terms used across Europe
that's
too.
The name of the Bhagavad Gita, right?
Yeah, Bhagavad Gita is Bhagavat is also is like so Bhagavat is like the instrumental. I mean, not instrumental, but the vocative, and then the Bhagavan is the nominative.
Have you ever heard someone change the to a w? Bhagwad? Bhagwad? I've heard someone do that before.
Yeah, Southeast Asia, they do that a lot.
That's where I'm hearing from them.
So it actually, even in India, so everyone says the goddess Saraswati, the va becomes of wa. Va. So in the Vedic it's Saraswati, but then in modern India the Saraswati, the wa comes into being, right? So within Sanskrit grammar, there's a lot of connections like this. For example, like the retroflex, like the ra, those words are connected to the da. So like even the first line of Rig Veda, Agni Ilam Parohidam. So it shouldn't be Ilam, it should be Iram. So the da becomes a la. And they talk about these rules of grammatical change that are connected to each other. And you find that as something as simple as saying handbag, and now people say handbag, right? The D gets dropped or whatever. So it's similar that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a couple other questions we got, but I still have a lot to ask you, even if we run through these. Andre, thank you for the super chat. Do Indian and Lithuanian culture have any connection?
Yeah, they do. So the two of the oldest preserved, the Lithuanian's amazing, fantastic, because it has preserved so much of their language. It's one of the most conservative Indo-European languages around.
The only reason why I said yes, like I know, is because when I was studying Dionysus, I found in Lithuania a remnant of the Sky Father and Semenya, which is Semele, and they have a son together who's like this chthonic god, like it's called something else. I can't remember his name. It's not Dionysus, but you can see it maps on with the Sky Father, Dios Pitar, and then the Earth Mother, whose name is Semena, almost like Semele, and then they had this son who's like this vegetative god son. It's so like I'm like, oh my god, Lithuania, they're bringing it.
Lithuania, like, so I don't know a lot about it, but I know some things, and there's deep. It's interesting because Lithuania only became Christian about 200 years ago, 300 years ago. It's one of the last places in the world to become Christian.
Held out the longest. You're right.
Yeah, so they maintained a lot of their traditions and language in a deep sense. And the only reason it's maintained in India is because the texts are written in Sanskrit and maintained by these groups of Brahmins that just memorize it and keep pronouncing it constantly.
Look at the Greek equivalent, Semele, and then you have the consort is Perkonos. That's what I was thinking of. That's the Sky.
Perkonos is connected to like Indra, I guess. Sometimes they say that.
Indra, right. Yeah,
but his name is it would be maybe Parjanya in the Vedic sense.
Yeah, he's very much like he's like Zeus. He's the Sky Father. He holds the lightning bolt, all that stuff. Yeah. But anyway, this one is even more fascinating because it's also Semele, like you see it right there. And like the word Semele in Thracian, not Greek, in Thracian means earth. Because in Greek, it's gay or day, means earth.
Yeah.
But in Thracian, which is very close to Greek, they have a different word, which is Zemele. Right? Look at it right here.
Yeah.
Thracian word Zemele, Mother Earth. So you can see the Semele is not just a native to just Greek, but all the way in Lithuania, they know about Semele. Fascinating, right?
I mean, there's so much about history we just don't know. It could have been like one tiny tribe that somehow made its way up there, and that myth just took hold. I don't know. It's really fascinating.
This is the one, by the way. This is the one that I was told is very similar to Dionysus, Zemeliux.
Interesting.
And he's like Semele's son or something, Zemeliux. I don't know. I'm not sure the etymology, but he's the Lord or God of Earth, buried in the earth. Like what? That's so Dionysian. Because when I was in Delphi, they tell you how this is the temple of Apollo for 9 months out of the year.
Yeah,
but Dionysus is buried in the earth there. They believe that he was buried right there. The dead body of Zagreus was carried off by Apollo, buried at Delphi, while the heart was saved by Athena, and then later given to Semele, right? She drinks the potion. But anyways, the body of Dionysus was buried in the earth in Delphi, which makes you think they got a similar tradition in Lithuania.
Is that Dionysus tradition connected to the Titan tradition, or is this the okay?
So I'll just in case someone's wondering what we're talking about. There's a tradition about Dionysus that shows up in the Hellenistic period that says that Zagreus was the firstborn Dionysus. Zagreus means like life, son or something. Has to do with the Zoe, life. Anyways, Zagera, I forgot. I don't know the etymology. But Zagreus is like this life god, right? And he's the heir to Olympus. And it's not Semele's son. It's Persephone's son. Zeus finds Persephone in the form of a dragon, gets her pregnant. She has this child, Zagreus. He's the divine child, the chosen heir. You got from Uranus, Saturn, Zeus, and now Zagreus. That's how important he is. Anyways, Hera is jealous. Of course, this is what Hera does. She's raging. She sends the Titans, as you just asked, Titans to go and kill this child, but make sure when you do it, the way you got to do it is you're gonna have to show him toys, and you're gonna have to like get him to like see the toys, and once he sees the toys, and you have him, and you got him on the hook, tear him apart, and then sacrifice him and eat him as an offering. And they do this, and Zeus is obviously pissed about this. So what Zeus does, and so what happens is Zeus sends a deluge that wipes out the entire cosmos, and from the dead body of the Titans, he recreates the world from that. But his son Apollo is given the mortal remains of Zagreus, and brings him to Delphi. And that's why you get in Delphi, you get this tradition where for 9 months out of the year, Apollo is the oracle. But when wintertime comes, once that October month hits, once that spring or that fall autumn equinox passes over, and it starts getting cold out and darker out, Apollo's gone. He goes up to the land of the Hyperboreans, according to Pindar, and he plays his lyre for the Hyperboreans for 3 months. And the aurora borealis, those lights, those northern lights, they believe that was Apollo's light, that he was performing his lyre. Anyways, during those 3 months, while he's up there doing that miracle, the Delphians are worshiping Dionysus, and they're not doing oracles through Apollo anymore. They're doing oracles through intoxication of the wine. So he's an intoxication. It's like soma. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, the soma, homa, and then I think we talked about last time, even the what's it called, the Greek one, the kikitos, or was it
kukeon?
Kukeon, yeah. They're all connected. It's very interesting.
Yeah, they're all etymologically connected. Even if soma and haoma and kukeon, and there's another one called there's another Scythian one that starts with a ku as well. It's the same beginning consonant as they don't make them the same. Some of them are milk derived, some of them are wheat derived, some of them are wine derived. It's not about how they make it. It's about what they're doing. They're putting you in a state so you can receive the god's oracle. So however you make it is not the point. It doesn't matter how you make this potion. It matters what the potion does to you.
Well, so here's the interesting part. In the Vedic tradition, the making of it is huge, right? So there's a lot in the Rig Veda itself that's about the pressing of the soma, because the Vedic tradition is very much about ritual. So everything in the world, universe becomes this yajna. So basically the yajna we do here on the ground, let's say the pravagya yajna, in which you press the soma and then you finally burst the pot by pouring the hot hot milk in it, and it bursts. It's connected to the bursting forth of creation. So the yajna is the ability for the microcosm to engage itself in the microcosmic activity, and in doing so, it reifies and nourishes the universe and the microcosm. So the ritual itself is, in fact, there's a hymn in the Rig Veda. I think it's the first mandala, where it's like 40 verses, 50 verses just on the ritual. And people don't fully understand what's going on. Like even scholars like, Stephanie Jameson, Griffith, these people have translated it, don't fully understand what's happening here. But it's very interesting. The ritual plays out everywhere.
And you made a good point, is that it matters, how you make it matters to that tradition.
Yeah.
But how it gets called this title of the same title over and over but different recipes is because it has that divine potion trait.
Right.
You're using the same word for a different potion because it gets you to the same place. It's doing the same thing. But you're absolutely right that the ritual does matter. I shouldn't have said it the way I did. It does matter. But they all have their own different way of doing it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And so later on in the Upanishads, you'll find they take the physical ritual that occurs and internalize it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the same way with Kukeon, the way it was pressed, the way it was done was very ritualistic. It was very sacred, very serious, not just to joke around with. You're like, you can't go to the market and buy Kukeon.
No.
You're only going to get Kukeon at Eleusis by a priest.
Yeah.
Anyways, Bubblegum says, it's chaos. My newbie youngling. God is chaos. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, it depends on what you define as chaos. I mean, I'm not sure.
Well, I think what they mean is in some of these primordial myths, you have in the beginning a sort of a chaos. Like in Hesiod, for example, he literally calls it chaos. In the beginning was chaos. And then from chaos came Eros and Nyx and Gaia and Uranos, and all these gods came out of it. I get what they're saying. Chaos.
Yeah, the Vedic tradition doesn't start with the chaos. The chaos is a subsequent element of, let's say, if you connect the chaos to later concepts of asuras. Now, I mean, the asura concept is historically interesting because there's a big change. But later concepts of asuras, then there's chaotic elements there. But originally, in most of the myths, it starts with a state of tranquility, and then desire arises, and from desire arises this egg or whatever, which the universe is born out of, and it's not as chaotic.
Which is interesting because even though that doesn't have that chaos element, it still has the desire element. Eros means desire in Greek.
Yeah.
So in both traditions, the first sort of primordial divinity that leaps forth is this. It's
chaos.
So
desire.
Desire. But it's so fascinating because and I don't know if they meant this or this is just a coincidence, because our universe is made up of what is it called? Not gravity and dark matter. Now, I don't know if they meant this or this is just a weird coincidence that I'm noticing, but what is gravity? Gravity is kind of like a physical desire of physical bodies that are attracted to each other in the cosmos. In a physical sense, gravity is desire. It's just the bigger bodies of mass can attract more. You know what I mean? Anyways, that's on a physical plane. But on the other sense, Nyx is one of these primordial deities that springs forth with Eros in Hesiod. And it's black night. It's almost like dark matter. And I don't know. That might be just a crazy coincidence that I'm noticing, but who knows?
So in some sense, the way they later traditions and partially Vedic too, in the Vedic tradition, there's these concepts of activity and non-activity, right? So the Purusha, when I talked about Sankhya, the Purusha represents pure consciousness that doesn't act. There's no chaos. It's just stability. Prakriti, or the goddess, is pure activity, is what you might want to call, if you want to use the word chaos there, because her action is a dance, and dance can be very chaotic. And so the idea is them together dancing creates a universe of order that we see.
Wow. That's very fascinating. Thanks for that super chat, Bubblegum. I got another one from Snappy from Drawing Down the Stars. The ops of Greek and the Vak of the Vedas are eerily similar. I don't know much about Vak. Do you?
Yeah. So Vak is one of the primary female deities in the Vedic tradition. So later on, she gets merged, or maybe even then it was merged with Saraswati as goddess of knowledge. So Vak is speech. The power of Vak impels the rishis, or the seers, to give the mantras, which brings the truth to us. So Vak is the energy of not just human beings and rishis, but of the gods. It's through speech that they create. So Vak itself is, I mean, you could call it a primordial deity, but she is the essence of thought, of speech, of art, of the flow.
And I'm wondering, because Ops is like this primordial mother deity, equated with Greek Rhea. Is that how
No.
Vok-
So Ops might be closer to someone like Shri or Lakshmi. Well, if you're going to make some sort of connection, I'm not. It might not be the case. So I guess the Sanskrit is connected to Upnas.
Yeah.
So goods property. So and I don't see the connection to Vok, because Vok isn't necessarily goods.
And I know Snappy always has reasons for this stuff. Snappy's always.
I would love to hear why he thinks that.
Yeah. Snappy's always got some good reasons for this stuff. I have no idea. Vok is new to me. Like I said, I want to get more into, learn more about the Vedic side of this stuff, because it actually helps you learn more about Greek and Latin by comparison. Like it gives you something to measure off of, something to bounce it off of, something. And sometimes it fills in some gaps that are missing when you look at other courses like that, I wanted to ask you about the Vedas.
Yeah.
This is one of the questions that I've been wondering, because I've been studying the Torah and the Tanakh, and when does it show up in the sources? Is it really as old as they say it is? A lot of scholars say it's from Hellenistic period. Some say Persian period. Some say it's a rolling text and there's older layers. It goes back and blah, 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 blah. And I'm wondering, is the Vedas has the same issues? Like when do people start citing the Vedas, and how far back do you think it actually goes?
So this is where it gets really complex, because manuscripts versus what we know from traditions and speech or whatnot, right? Like, so the earliest manuscripts of the Vedas, I think, are somewhere around like the 8th or 9th century CE, not even BCE, right? So 2,000 years after the Vedas were started, right? So most Indologists and Indo-European scholars place the Vedas somewhere between 2000 to 1200 BCE.
Damn.
The reason they give that broad swath is so let me give a breakdown. So the Vedas are broken down into 4 sections, all Veda. So there's 4 Vedas, and each Veda has 4 sections. So the 4 Vedas are Rik, Yajus, Sama, and Atharvana. And then each of those have 4 sections. It's called mantra. Then they have Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. So the Rig Veda is considered the oldest. The Rig Veda mantra section is considered the oldest. And so they're postulating that occurring around the time of somewhere between 1800, let's say 2000 to 1200 BCE. They don't know the exact dates because they have to assign dating bands. Now, this is also connected to originally, like when Max Muller developed the timeline, he connected it to the age of the earth that the old Christians said to 6000 BCE. So it can be much further older than that. I don't think it's so. My sense is the Rig Vedas are something started earlier than 2000 BCE. That's just my sense. But modern scholarship says it's somewhere, let's say 2000 to 1200 BCE. Now, the Rig Veda, which is the first section called mantra, is called a mantra samhita. Samhita means the bringing together. So these are verses and entire poetry written by at least 100 people over the course of centuries. So they don't know the time frame. So all we have to know who wrote what sometimes is internally the text says this rishi wrote it, this person's writing this, or there's a later text called the Nirukta, and there's all that connects the rishis, or Brahad Devata connects the rishis to the particular text. So there's a big change in the language too that occurs in what we call the old books, roughly I think books 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7, and the new books, which is like 1, 8, 9, 10. I think that's how that works out. The new books language is very different from the old books. For example, the old books use the word for night, very similar to the German word Nacht,
which
right?
is similar to the Latin word nox.
Yeah,
and Greek nukes.
Yeah. The newer Rig Veda uses words ratri instead. So
that's how you can tell it's older, because it has that Indo-European root.
Right. So what they see is like these changes occurring in the language. So now there's two ways to view this. One is one's older, one's younger. The other way to view it would be like, well, actually, they might be from different regions. They have different speaking patterns and different whatever. So it's complex. But the Rig Veda is relative. It's probably the oldest, one of the oldest texts we have. Now, it's preserved by scholars like Michael Witzel, Patrick Olivelli. Most Indology scholars will make the claim that the Vedic texts are probably the most preserved texts in human history, and in terms of oral traditions of any sort. Like almost nothing has changed. As Michael Witzel says, it's as if you're listening to a tape recorder from 3,000, 4,000 years ago, because of the way they're taught and the way they have passed it on from tradition to tradition, or from father to son and so on. So the Vedic tradition, in that sense, is very, very old. Now, we don't know how old. We have to just make assumptions, bringing in linguistic data, maybe genetic data, archaeological data, and then you put it together, because the latest manuscript we have is like 8th century. Now, we do have earlier manuscripts referring to, like, for example, even in the time of the Buddha or a little bit after Ashokan edicts, you'll find reference to the Vedas. So you know they're at least around since then, at minimum.
Somebody pointed out in the comments,
yeah,
there's a cuneiform tablet, because a lot of people don't realize cuneiform is not a language; it's a writing style. Like Akkadian language, cuneiform is how they write it. Sanskrit was found in cuneiform on a Hittite tablet dated to like 1400 BC.
Yeah,
and what is on it is Vedic gods from the Vedas.
So you're talking about Mitanni. So the Mitanni people. So this is the Mitanni. So it's not. I mean,
isn't there more than one or no?
No, the Hittites are an Indo-European group. So, but they're different traditions. So they actually don't have the Vedic gods. The Mitannis do. The Mitanni group of people.
Yeah, you're right. It's the Mitanni.
Yeah. So the Mitanni group of people refer to 5 deities, I believe. Indra, the Ashvins, Nasas Dias, the Varuna.
Yeah.
And I think Agni or something like that. Yeah. Agni.
Here they are. Varuna, Mitra, Indra. And these are gods that show up in the Rig Veda.
Right.
So but now here's another. The reason why this is so important is when you're looking for evidence of the Torah in any cuneiform or wherever, there's none. Zero. You don't find any mentions of Moses. You don't find any mentions of Noah. You do find Yahweh. Of course, there's Yahweh, but like, I don't know how to say this without like coming off as biased, but like when I find a tablet in cuneiform that mentions Mitra next to Varuna, next to Natasa, next to Agni, I'm thinking Rig Veda. I'm thinking this is something similar to the Rig Veda, maybe as an older source that the Rig Veda draws from. Maybe that's a possibility. It might not be the Rig Veda, but the point is, we already found more evidence than the Bible already, just off one tablet.
Yeah, and if you look at the horse training manual of Kikuli, you'll see that Vedic numbers are there. Eka, Traya, for example, Ashva. Ashva is horse, and that's connected to. So you see Eka, Traya, Pancha, Sata, which is 7, Nava 9. So these are all like clearly Vartana means to turn, going around. So these are clearly Indo-Aryan words. Whether they're actual Vedic Sanskrit or older parent or a sister or cousin, I don't know, and most people don't know. But it's clearly that this was around since then in the Middle East.
In the middle, out of all places. I mean, I'm just going to show people real quick. Mitanni Empire. So look at this. Just so you guys know, they find this tablet out of all places, not all the way in India, over here.
Yeah.
Over here. And let's look at, here's Babylon. Here's where, Phoenicia is. Up here is where they find a Rig Veda tablet. And this is from 1400 BC in the Bronze Age.
The tablet they found is actually closer to like 1750.
Is it? So it's even older.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Which means like this Rig Veda does have. So I was wondering, are they dating it based on the text says this, or are they dating it based on rigorous actual research? And it looks like the Rig Veda has a better claim to being a Bronze Age source than the Bible does. Way better. It's got way more evidence for it.
Yeah, but the difficulty is always going to be with material culture, is writing is such a late, a player in the game, and on top of that, like the preservation of text going back is pretty bad, right? You're writing animal skins, you're writing on like vegetables and plants, but that it's organic. It's gonna die unless you leave it like the Nag Hammadi library, sitting in a dry place where it doesn't really, the nature doesn't destroy it. So it is difficult to date some of this stuff. And we have to be very, very take it with a grain of salt at some level. But
I would even say on top of that, I don't think you can necessarily say if you find a tablet that has Vedic gods in it, doesn't necessarily mean that the Rig Veda existed yet. It means there could have been sources that they're both drawing from. This is what I say about people. People will find a source that mentions Yahweh, and they'll be like, "Oh, the Bible had to have existed if Yahweh did." No, Yahweh can exist, and whatever source that you're talking about could be drawing from a source that the Bible's also drawing from. It doesn't have to be one to the next. There's more. There could be more sources out there that they're all sort of coming from. Does that make sense?
This is the interesting part that I think is worth. I mean, this is a super scholarly point, but all those 6 deities referred to in there are what's known as dvandas. They're pairs. They're almost always connected in the Rig Veda. And the thing that's interesting is most other Indo-European traditions don't have it. Like, for example, Mitra Varuna are always connected to, Agni Indra are always connected to, the Nasatas are always, they're the twins. The Dioscuri, you might call them in Greek. So the Ashvins is another name for them.
And so to find these matched like that, so it would be like finding a source from the Bronze Age that not only mentions Noah, but it mentions him having 8 sons. All of a sudden the numbers are lining up, and all of a sudden there's like other things beyond the names lining up. That's what this is like. This attests that the Rig Vedic tradition probably existed at this point.
Yeah. Well, some form of that tradition, whatever it was existed. Yeah. And who knows if it was earlier tradition that later became, but my sense is you don't find these other deities even in the Avestan. You find Varuna, but he exists as Ahura Mazda. The trace of Varuna is gone. The name, it becomes Ahura or Mazda.
Uranos in Greek.
Yeah, Mitra exists. Indra, interesting, exists in the Avestan, but he's split into 2 characters. He's split into Indra, which is the Deva, which is their part of the Druj, the bad ones. And then he's split into what is the Yashatas, which at that time he's called Veratagnya, which is Indra's name in the Rig Veda as Vrittagnya, the destroyer of Vritra. But there's no myth in the Avestan around the destruction of Vritra, which is central in the Rig Veda.
Yeah,
Agni exists in the Avestan as Attar, but Attar is connected to, so the Atharva Veda, my sense is Atharva Veda came from those guys, from the Zoroastrian or their precursor, because the Atharva is Atharva Veda, Attar. Those are connected words, and they're actually connected to fire. Both of those fire traditions.
Yeah, so Agni, and then you have Agni, obviously. Yeah.
So it's very, very interesting. But there's other gods in the, like, for example, Vata, which is also in Avestan is called Vayu and Vata in Vedic tradition. Raushnu might be connected to Vishnu. There's connections there. Sarva in their tradition is Shiva, probably, who's also a Deva.
Anahita sort of has like this. What is she?
Anahita Saraswati, probably, yeah.
So you can see how the Persians are coming from a similar tradition.
Yeah. So it's interesting because they actually flip some of this on its head.
Right. But David become evil.
Yeah.
And it becomes not good. And you want to worship the Asuras, which is a whole different line of being. Right?
But here's also the more interesting element is in the Rig Veda, Asura doesn't mean anything more than Lord. Indra is called Asura. Mitra is called Asura. Varuna is called Asura. So
that throws a wrench to everything right there. Makes it all confusing.
Yeah, because the later tradition in the Veda, the later Vedic tradition, Asura has become a separate class. But in the Rig Veda, they're not yet separated. They're the same. It's just a word, asura, meaning Lord.
So you
The
have the
mighty one.
lords and the daemons.
Yeah, but they're not separated originally. They're the same being, right? You know, Indra,
in Greek, it's like that too, because the Titans and the Olympians aren't necessarily like different in the sense of like they're different places. They have like their genealogies go back to the primordial gods,
right?
They just become separated by like the war, the Titanomachia,
Right.
and then like so, but like they're not like they're all gods, you know,
right?
Like
but in the Rig Veda, the opposite is not asura; it's Danava, the children of Danu, which some people are now claiming it's connected to maybe the Celtic people or the Danube River. Danu also can mean water, but it's interesting that the asura term in the Rig Veda has nothing to do with separate group of people. It's just a word that means great one, the mighty Lord.
Even the sun was a Titan in some sources. The Hyperion, the first sun.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
and even in later Latin sources, Sol Invictus is called Great Titan.
Yeah.
It's like they're sort of taking all the solar traditions and putting them all into one. And Sol Invictus, the Great Titan.
So in the Vedic tradition, there's 3 primary classes of beings. There's the Adityas, the Devas, and then you have the Rudras, right? There's 11 Rudras, usually 12 Adityas, and then 11, 12, and then I think like 10 Devas. So those equal 33 gods.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, so like the 12 Adityas, Indra is one of the Adityas, Surya, Bhaga, Pushan, and then in the Rudras it'll be the Sarva. There's 12 different Rudras, and then the 10 Devas. It's very interesting because these are the classes of beings. Now it's not a formed fixed class. Some of the gods go between the classes and move around. So it's very interesting. Even what's his name writes on this? My God. Dumazel.
Oh yeah, my favorite. Yeah. Since you brought that up, let me ask you about numbers. Because 33, 12, 7, you find these in all the traditions. But is there anything that stands out to you in particular in Indian versus?
Well, I mean, so usually it's connected to.
You mentioned 33.
Yeah. So, for example, 12 connected to the sun.
Yeah.
12 stations in the sky as the sun goes from morning till night. That's the 12. Or it could refer to the 12 months, the year around the sun. Right. Again, the 12 phases. 7 can refer to the 7 lights that they would see with the visible eye. Connected.
The planets.
Yeah. Or the planets or the visible eye lights. Just the rays, and it's also connected. And it's also connected to 7 notes of music.
Yeah. Because the 8 chord comes later.
Yeah. So and then the 8th chord is subsumed to the 1st chord, right? It's just a higher octave. It just jumps to the higher octave. So it's the 7's connected there, and then each of those numbers, the 3 is connected to like the language itself, right? Language has masculine, feminine, neuter, first person, second person, plural. So this 3 linguistic is connected to reality because language can speak in reality in these terms. And then there's each number has a significance. Like the 5 would be connected to the 5 elements. The 2, the consciousness and non-consciousness. So everything is connected. Yeah.
So that makes sense that you would find these numbers in all these traditions. It's not like the one's borrowing, but they're all noticing the same thing. They're all noticing the same 5 planets.
Yeah.
They're all the same this, same that. So it's showing up in the sources because of what they're witnessing in the sky.
And then they interact with each other. For example, when the Greeks interacted with the Indians started doing astrology better, astronomy better. They had better concepts of that. Like, and
Greek Alexandro Romance points out, they call them the naked philosophers, the gymnosophists, but they praise them. They don't make fun of them, or they talk about how wise they were and how peaceful and how much wisdom they had and how much virtuous they were.
Oh yeah,
they really looked up to the Indian sages as like someone to really take some note from.
Yeah, and I think similar in Indian texts you find it's interesting. They'll be like, they're barbarians, but they're really good at math and science.
No, what you brought up is a good point. Sometimes when these authors write about barbarians, it's not always in a bad way.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have a lot of like love for the barbarians and what they're doing and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, the word barbarian is just like barba, right?
Using their word.
Yeah, I mean, in the Vedic tradition or Hindu tradition, instead of saying barbarians, they use the word mlecha, because when they heard people talk, it's like mlecha, so they use the word mlecha, referring to non civilized people, quote unquote, as they call it, their civilization. It doesn't mean they're primitive. It just means you're not civilized like our civilization. That's all.
Yeah, it's just they're not Greek or Latin or
whatever.
Anyways, here's another super chat. Elwa Sabao. Thoughts on the Trinity and Trimurti? This is a good question.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. The Trinity, the Trimurti is not necessarily a foundational concept in the Vedic tradition, right? So the Trimurti actually starts coming up more and more in the Mahabharata, Ramayana, the Puranas. So in the Vedas, you don't really see the idea of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva as the Trinity. You do have things like creation, destruction, and preservation as the three functions of the universe, but they're not necessarily always connected to the deities. That connection occurs, I think, in later traditions, and it's just connected to the three gods, connected to their what they would call their inherent swabhava or their nature. So I don't think it's the same. The Trinity,
not the same at all. But this is obviously way older too. The idea of three being one is sort of foreign. These are three separate beings.
Yeah. Although the tradition they will say they're all one being. To describe them differently is not correct.
Oh, it says
there's just three aspects.
One supreme entity divides itself into three forms.
Yeah.
So it kind of, you can kind of see why someone would say, "Hey, this sounds like a trinity."
Yeah, but its connection is to the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the world. It's not necessarily for the purposes of
not like Father, Son, Holy. Yeah, they have different.
Yeah.
They have different. So one thing you're trying to emphasize is their roles, what they represent, what their roles are.
Yeah.
Because Jesus can be a destroyer and he can be a healer. See, he's just one. He's just the Son. But he can do both. He can be a Revelation, Apocalypse Jesus, or he can be Matthew healing everyone Jesus. So like, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Father is the destroyer and the Son is the healer. It's like, but you're saying in the Trimurti, they have specific roles that they have.
Well, yes, and this is where it gets really complex. Is, for example, in the Puranas, there's 18 what they call the great Puranas, and of the 18, those are broken down into what's known as Sattva, Raja, and Tamo. And what that means, Sattva is like, let's say, stable, fixed. Rajas is active. Tamo is like inert, and they're all connected to the three gods. Vishnu is connected to Sattva. Rajas is connected to Brahma. Maheshwara or Shiva is connected to Tamo. And each of those texts will play up their god to be supreme. For example, in the Vaishnavite text, it will say Vishnu is the only creator, destroyer, and maintainer, but from him comes Brahma, and then from Brahma comes Shiva, and eventually they all go back into Vishnu. But in the Shiva text, it says Shiva is at the end of his dance. He creates the world again at the destruction. He's the source of origin and creation. Each of them will play the primacy of each of those deities. So it gets super like, it depends on your tradition, what texts are going to be authoritative or not to you.
Yeah. And when does this start showing up in the sources, the Trimurti? Is it later, early? What do you think?
My sense is probably in the last few centuries of the BCE. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unless you date the Mahabharata, which I tend to date the Mahabharata closer to like 800 to maybe 1000, then I would say there. But most scholars give a wide range, somewhere between 5th century BC to 4th century CE.
The Mahabharata itself?
Yeah,
because that's a big text.
100,000 verses. Yeah, 100 something thousand. Yeah.
I mean, I would probably, and I'm just guessing. I'm not even close to even knowing anything about the Mahabharata. other than the English translations that I've read. But if I had to guess, a text that big probably was not written in one day.
No, so there's
go back farther than other layers.
So there's two traditions on this. Two scholarly positions. So majority of scholars take the position that there was this text and then got built up over millennia. And that is people like someone like Larson or Fitzgerald or Brockington, and actually the German ones, yeah. That's why.
Just to show people how thick even just the translation.
By the way, that's the abridged version,
and this is probably not even close to being the whole thing.
No. The one I have is 8 books. It takes a whole shelf on.
And the reason I was just going to say that this even tells you that this even goes. This is not even close to being the whole thing.
No.
Right after that tells you.
No. So the Mahabharata. So in that sense, so the German scholars used to assume some sort of Ur warrior epic, Bronze Age epic, but that theory got thrown away because it's too integrated to have been written over that kind of time period. So the other positions by people like Madeleine Bordeaux and or Berdou and Alf Hiddlediddle, who basically argue that the text was probably composed within a century or a century and a half before the end of the BC by one individual, small group of people. So it's because it's cohesion and narrative structure and the framework of the story is too tight. What people used to previously call it a monstrosity because they couldn't understand it. Now that they've understood the narrative framework after 1924, when the critical edition came out, there's a whole new understanding of the text.
Is it historical? Are the Pandavas a real family?
So this is where it gets kind of iffy. So maybe. So, for example, the Pandavas are not referred to in the Vedas, but their ancestors are.
Yeah.
Their ancestors are. Shantanu, Dhritarashtra.
That kind of points to there being something real going on.
Right. And their descendants are.
Yeah.
Parikshit and Janamejaya. The Pandavas are not. So they're referred to briefly. Arjun's
a Pandava, right?
Arjuna is a Pandava.
Yeah.
Just one sec. Yeah,
take your time. He's got to tell his dog to go inside or something. You good? Oh, you're still talking. Oh, go ahead. I'm
just going to go inside. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah, I'll engage with the chat. I'll put you on the bottom for a second. So yeah, let me see what you guys are saying. So yeah, if anyone's wondering what we're talking about, the Vedas, which is this, is the older poetry that you get that goes back to like pre-writing. Like as soon as writing shows up, you start finding the Vedas. That's old. The Mahabharata, on the other hand, comes a little bit later, but it's more epic. It's more like Homer. It's wars and battles and stories, and it's an epic. Inside the Mahabharata is what you all heard of. Everyone's heard of the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Lord. That's what it's called. That's inside of this. So the Bhagavad Gita is not a separate text. It's a portion of the Mahabharata. So the Mahabharata has inside of it the Bhagavad Gita. That's a story about Krishna coming to Earth, telling Arjun, who's one of these Pandava princes, that he needs to go to war because he doesn't want to go to war because he doesn't want to fight his family. He doesn't want to kill the other Pandavas. But Krishna says, no. This has to happen. You have to fight. You have to move the needle forward in order. Chaos was going to breed, or destruction will breed creation in the end. This will be good. You need to do this. Action is better than inaction. And then you also have the Upanishads. That's another Hindu or Vedic source, which is like, wisdom and, Upanishads, wisdom of the mystics. But here he's back now.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, the dogs had to go inside the house for a second. No, I hear what you're saying. So, yeah. So, going back to the point you're making, so the Mahabharata is about two cousins. Well, the Pandavas, the 5, and the Kauravas, the 100. Now, the text itself is super dense, not just for narrative, but it's also commentary on the Vedas. So, for example, you will find each of the characters parallels concepts and ideas in the Vedic tradition itself. So, for example, like the ritual I was talking about earlier, the same rituals brought up as the text itself being that ritual, and then the characters in the text refer to ritual practices, actions, and motifs in the Vedas. So when you go to we ask about the history of the text. So my sense is it is historical. Now, a lot of archaeologists in India think it's historical because, for example, a few years ago, maybe 20 years ago, they actually found off the coast of Gujarat, Dwarka, the city of Dwarka, which is somewhere within its various stratas. It's going back 2000 BCE down to like 800 BC, and it was submerged. And they found coins and other things or other archaeological evidence to show that the Dwarka talked about in the Mahabharata might be analogous to this, because they're the same coins are referred to in the Mahabharata text that you found in the archaeological finds.
Damn,
And
that's good evidence.
yeah, I mean, so it's evidence that there was some memory. Whether or not it's actually connected to that is a whole other story.
Well,
but there's something.
That's analogous to finding the Mesha stele, and it mentions kings that are mentioned in the Bible, which is so at the very least, the kings are historical. We don't know if the stories written about them are true.
Right.
Like, it's very analogous to what you're saying is going on over here in India.
Right. So the Mahabharata, like you were saying earlier, is this massive text, and the text is about, at the human level, a war between two families. At the cosmic level, the war between the Devas and Asuras, and at the inner level, the war of the human self. Right, the five senses versus 100. The five Pandavas represent the five senses. The 100 Kauravas represent desires. So the war is between your senses and desires. So this war between the two, of which Krishna is the charioteer who steers your mind like he does the senses to beat the desires. So the Bhagavad Gita, which comes in the Mahabharata, is Krishna telling Arjuna, you have to fight this battle because you have exhausted all their options. And for justice or dharma to occur, you must do your duty, and even do your duty despite the fact you don't want to. Because to act and not act, they're both actions. So you can't live in the world without acting. So whatever you do is an action, so act in a way that's going to bring yashas or glory and dharma and truth and all these things. So one element of that, but there's so much more of the Gita that you can actually expound on, because it's not just a conversation, it's a philosophy played out there. There's metaphysics and ethics and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's very deep. It's very deep, and I'm not surprised that it became one of the most central texts in all of literature ever.
So
it's like it's one of the greatest texts ever written.
In my view, I think there's no text in the world like the Mahabharata. So there's a line in the Mahabharata that says, whatever is found here is found elsewhere, but what is not found here is found nowhere else. Basically, this idea is...
It reminds me of a Greek proverb so much. Yeah. These people are like cousins. Like you could say.
And the text, it's 100,000 verses, but it covers mythology, history, there's science, mathematics, there's morality, and it's really, really deep and esoteric. And it takes I've read it. It took me a year and a half to read it from cover to cover. And that's the English and the Sanskrit together. So that's like pretty cool stuff. I think it's one of the most underread texts.
Yeah. Now, what would you compare? Because the Vedas is poetry. You could compare that to like Psalms or even like Pindar or something.
Sure.
But like the Mahabharata is kind of more like Homer, more epic. I was saying that before you got here. I want to hear your thoughts though. I'm just guessing.
It's a mix. So yes, it's definitely like, so there's this great scholar, Kevin McGrath. He passed away, I think 2 years ago. He was at Harvard, and he was a scholar of both the Greek tradition and the Indian tradition. So he was master of the Odyssey, and the master of the Mahabharata.
And they both have big wars happening between these two opposing families, like
right. Yeah, and very much the Mahabharata war starts off with the dilemma of conscience. The war, I mean, although the Homeric epic Iliad doesn't start off at the beginning of the war, but like 10 years in, you have this moment of impasse of Achilles and his rage. It's a juxtaposition. Like Achilles is actually closer to this character in the Mahabharata, Karna.
Karna. I was going to say that. I have the same impression.
Yeah. So Karna represents this
really strong warrior who rages out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think part of this could be Mahabharata is also about the shifting of an age and I think it could have been at the cusp of the Bronze Age going into a new age with new ethics and morality. So Krishna's morality and ethics is different from someone like Bhishma or Karna, because their ethics.
Bhishma, or I'll say Bhima is more like Hercules, but Bhishma is like this grandfather figure.
Oh yeah. Bhishma is the undefeatable warrior.
Who would you compare Bhishma to in Greek? Agamemnon, maybe?
No, because Bhishma doesn't have those kind of base desires.
He's older though.
He's much older. He's the grandfather of all the Pandavas and Kauravas. Yeah. And he's trying to prevent this war. He's like the steward,
man, willing to die for what he believes.
Yeah. So it's interesting because what I think is
Duryodhana. How do you say it? Duryodhana, right? How do you say it?
Yeah, Duryodhana. Yeah, Duryodhana.
That character is fascinating.
Oh yeah.
He's sort of the antagonist, but the things he says makes you almost want to root for him a little bit.
Sometimes you're like,
he's so cool and wise, but he's also evil as hell.
Well, it's not he's evil. He's super jealous and he wants what he wants. He's overwhelmed with desire. My kingdom, I own it. I want it.
He's fighting for what he wants.
Yeah, but he's doing so in an underhanded way.
Krishna always shows up and laughs at him. Duryodhana, what are you doing? Shut up, Krishna. I know what I'm doing. And it just tilts back to Krishna. Like, it's not like it's funny, man. But it's so good. People should go read it. Go read it. Go get it.
Drona is really, really fascinating in the story. Sorry?
Drona?
Drona is the teacher. Yeah. He's well, he's not, and it's interesting. All the characters are flawed. Right, every single character is flawed.
Yeah,
and there's no one good character. Like for example,
Krishna's the good character.
Well, Krishna is beyond good and evil, and so he.
Well, I noticed the thread in the Mahabharata is Krishna is always coming to the rescue.
He comes into the rescue.
I'll give you an example. There's the one story where the Brahmins are coming to this village, and they're all freaking out because they only have one piece of rice left.
No, so I'll tell the story.
You tell the story, yeah.
Yeah, so stories like this. So when the Pandavas were in the forest, they were exiled. Their wife was, cooking for them, but she heard about these hundreds of sages coming, and she knew if she couldn't make cook for them and make food for them, there's one sage in Durvasa who will curse them all. So she thinks of Krishna because all she has left is a morsel of food. So Krishna says, "What?" He comes and he tells these ascetics to go and take a shower, and then the food will be ready. And they come, and Krishna takes the morsel of food and eats it. And he says, if I am full, then all beings shall be full. And so all these sages get full, and they can't come back to the house because they're going to lose shame in asking someone, taking food when they're already full. So this idea that Krishna comes in as this deity that comes whenever people call on him, simply call on him to save them. He does.
That reminds me of the multiplication of the loaves when they're all like, "How are we going to feed all these people?"
Yeah.
And Jesus like, "What the hell? Don't you have any faith in me?" Like,
right.
That's what Krishna is in that story. He comes.
So Krishna's like,
he's like, "What are you guys complaining about? Watch me handle this."
Yeah, but that's for his devotees. But the flip side of the story is also, remember, Krishna's there to create this war. He's there. His purpose on this earth is to destroy the population of Earth.
That is true.
So it's this sense of
that is true. He's like the bad angel telling everyone to go to war.
Right. So there's this line in the Gita where Krishna says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chidushkadam dharma samsthapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. So Paritranaya sadhunam, I'm here to purify and be here for my devotees. Vinashaya chidushkadam, I'm here to destroy the evildoers. And for that purpose, I am born again, age to age to age to age. Right. So this idea is that the world, at some point gets a tipping point. The world gets overwhelmed. The earth, Mother Earth, in the beginning of the text, comes up to the gods and says, I am being pillaged. I'm being raped by forests being cut down and people are being destroyed. The burden on me is too much. And Krishna, as Vishnu, says, okay, I'll send all the gods down and they will take care of the asuras. I will come down to make sure this entire yajna, this entire sacrifice occurs. So he comes down to make the sacrifice occur. And this is the cosmic sacrifice, the war that's playing out in the narrative is playing out cosmically.
But it also goes into these little backstories that are really bizarre. Like one of them is coming to mind right now is this story about the river goddess, the Ganga, right?
Ganga. Yeah.
And she's like sacrificing her children.
That's Bhishma's mother, by the way.
Yeah.
So
what's her husband and one of the kings, right?
Shantanu.
And he's watching her like bring his children into the water and drowning them.
Yeah.
He can't stop her. But I never understood what this even meant. What's going on in this story?
The story gives you
story people who have no idea.
Okay. So what happens is Shantanu is this king and he's in the forest. He sees this beautiful maiden and he falls in love with her. And he says, I want to marry you. And she says, okay, but you have to make a promise to me you'll never question what I do. And he's like, because he's obsessed with her, he says, okay. And so he gets married and he has kids. And each kid she takes and drowns them in the river Ganga, her namesake. And on the 8th kid, he says, stop, what are you doing? And she says, you have violated your promise. This is your kid. This is Devavrata. I'm going to take him away and take him to heaven. She takes him to heaven. Yeah, that's his 8th son. So that's Bhishma. So Bhishma.
We're going to go back to that. Go ahead.
So Bhishma gets taken to heaven and where he gets trained. And then you learn in the text why that is in a previous, in let's say the realms of heaven, in a previous time, the 8 gods, the 8 Vasus, they're called Vasus, they're a group of gods, of which Dayus Patur was one of which, of the 8. He is Bhishma. So they all try to steal a beloved calf of a sage. And because of that, the sage curses them all to take birth in human form and suffer. But instead, they say, can one of us stay on earth and the rest of us get freed? And he says, yes, Dayus is the one that should stay on earth. So what happens is, in order to free these gods, Ganga drowns them. So their lives on earth are short, gone, and move on. Well, Bhishma has to suffer a full lifetime and more of human condition. So that is the story of Dayus Patur, Bhishma, becoming incarnate on earth, and he becomes the adopted grandfather of all the Pandavas.
So this elderly figure, Bhishma, is basically the Sky Father incarnated in flesh.
Yep.
Whoa, that's great. That's amazing. Now, the reason why I was so interested about the 8th thing, because this is god Eshmun from the Near East, right?
Yeah.
And he's this 8th son of this god Siddiq, who's equated with Jupiter, Sky Father.
Yeah.
Siddiq is the Sky Father. By the way, Melchizedek comes from, a lot of people think comes from this. A lot of people have speculated Melchizedek. Anyways, he has 7 sons who are the Keberoi, these ones, and the 8th is this special one named Eshmun.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how there's always, it's like 7, 8, and then you have Noah has 8 sons. David, guess what? Guess what son he is? He's the 8th son. Yeah.
Yeah. Guess Krishna.
Number 8 too.
Krishna's the 8th son.
Krishna is too?
He's the 8th son.
Oh.
And his father's name is Vasudeva. Vasu meaning sky, the god of the sky. His mother's name is Devaki.
It's Ashwin.
Yeah, his mother's name is Devaki, who is also the name for the Mother Earth.
Oh, the Deva Ki. Ki means earth. I was
No,
already gonna say,
a key is just a feminine aspect. It gets added on. I mean, it could be added on. It's just the ending. It means possessing. Who is of earth or devas. Devaki is a name for Prithvi, who's also the name for earth. So you have Father God, Father Sky, Earth, Krishna.
damn,
Eighth son.
something about this eighth son that you see all over the place.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
yeah, it's very interesting. And his 7 or 6 of his siblings were killed, and only his older brother lived because he was transferred in vitro to another person's womb.
Oh wow, that's like Dionysus being transported from one room to the next.
And that's why I said, guess the name of that god, Sankarsana. His brother, Krishna's brother, Sankarsana, who I said earlier in the episode might be connected to Dionysus.
So now I see why you're going there. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And then also in the Egyptian myths, there's 8 primordial deities that start off the cosmos, and the eighth, something like that. I gotta look that up later. But yeah, I'm trying to think what else we haven't discussed yet. But the Mahabharata is this book of epics and poetry. It's analogous to Homer in a lot of ways. Anything else? Yeah. What else we've been talking about?
I mean, the Mahabharata is it's its own. I could spend probably days talking about it because there's so much there. And the thing is, when you start the narrative off, and it's not only, like I said earlier, it's not only a narrative, but it's also linguistic. It's linguistically dense in terms of the way words are connected to each other, to concepts, like this idea, like, for example, the text starts off with this storytelling that there's layers, right? So to think of a Russian egg doll, Mahabharata is like a Russian egg doll. The largest layer, the outside layer, is a story told by this guy named Ugrashava Shauti, which means the one who says loudly, in what's a forest called Naimishika, in a forest of moments, to a dog, a character by the who's connected to a dog, Shonaka. So this story is emulated throughout the entire text, layer on layer, because the dog again represents the lowest of the low sometimes, but it's also one that barks. So this concept of of the words merging together to create this text of in a forest of moments, which are existence, is this conversation occurring, and it plays out. These motifs play out across the entire text. And there's great scholars, if you're interested, that you should look at. It is fantastic text, man. The Gita itself is 700 verses, and it's pretty dense.
And that's just one little passage inside the greater Mahabharata.
Yeah. The largest section of the text are connected to the war books, which are of which the Bhagavad Gita is found in the Bhishma Parva, the section of the Mahabharata called Bhishma's book, in which each of the war books is connected to the general that is leading that war, and it goes to the end of that particular.
Titles are that's where you get the titles from.
Well, at least the war books, right? So Bhishma Parva, then you have like Drona Parva, Karna Parva, Salya Parva, and then the last night. And it's these motifs are playing through, actually connect to later Hinduism as they flesh upon it. All the Puranas are downstream of the Mahabharata. They all are in a position after the Mahabharata war occurs, in which something like 18 million people are killed. Population of the earth is being decimated, and it is the shifting of age from the time of Dwapar. There's 4 ages in the Mahabharata. There's the golden age of Satyuga. There's the Krita Yuga, which is like Treta Yuga, which is the 3rd age, which is more like Dharma stands on 3 legs, not 4. Then Dwapara, which is where the war occurs, the 3rd age, or the 2nd age, you want to call it, and it's transitioning to our age, to our time. So this is part of the explanation, is how all supernatural beings are being culled from the earth in this war. It's cool. It's something that if you haven't read, I would be like, deeply read, because it's influenced all of Southeast Asia. Like even now, if you go to Thailand or Sumatra or Indonesia, they have the Ramayana being played out. But you go to, for example, I went to Angkor Wat. On one, it's a massive temple. One relief is the Mahabharata story. Other relief is the Ramayana. And we can talk about Ramayana too. It's funny because
in the comments, just as a super chat came up, same person, Awas Sabao. Thank you for super chat. When does the Ramayana come in the picture? You were just about to start talking about that.
Yeah, the Ramayana is
totally different text than the Mahabharata. This is not even the same.
Yes and no, right? Because there's two versions of the Ramayana in the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
So they told the entire story of the Ramayana in the Mahabharata, and that's called Rama Upakanya. And then there is the Ramayana itself, which is written by. So let's say Mahabharata is written by Vyasa, Veda Vyasa, who's also the person to have broke the Vedas down from one Veda into the four that we have today. And then the Ramayana is written by this poet called Valmiki. The text itself is called the first poetry. He's called the Adi Kavi, which means the first poet. The text, now the dating is similarly situated as the Mahabharata. So the Ramayana is interesting.
They're both written around the same time, you saying?
Yeah, somewhere around a few centuries apart, again, this is the difficulty because Ramayana is written as poetry. It's actually pure poetry. Mahabharata is prose mixed with poetry mixed with a few other things. It's very, very complex. Ramayana is something like 24,000 verses, right? It's not super long, but it's not short either. And similarly to Mahabharata, it's a story of Vishnu's avatar. Ramayana is the story of Rama, who's avatar of Vishnu. Mahabharata, the story of Krishna, who's avatar of Vishnu. And Rama comes down, and the Ramayana occurs is
the one with
similarly. Yeah. So Hanuman, the monkey god, is again similarly occurs is all the gods take form in human or animal bodies to kill one person, Ravana, who's the ultimate antagonist in the text, and he's not a good guy. So Ravana in the text is like a serial rapist, power hungry guy who does all the ritualistic stuff, or does all the aesthetic practice in the beginning of the text to gain power.
Rama Navami?
Rama Navami is the birthday of Rama. Rama Navami means the 9th day. So
Ravana is the demon king.
Ravana, yeah, Ravana.
So this is the demon.
Yeah, and yeah, he's 10-headed, as they say.
Oh wow.
And
that's like what I saw on DMT. This is what I saw on DMT, dude.
Yeah.
I might have met a demon that day.
Yeah.
So it looked like this too. Like it had multiple heads and shit.
Yeah.
Back to what you're saying.
No, it's so Ravana is basically he's the son of a sage. He desires power. He gets a boon from Brahma, and he says, I don't want to be able to. I want to be immortal. Brahma says, no, I can't make you immortal. He's like, okay, then fine. I want to be invincible from all beings except men and animals, because he thinks they're lesser than him. They can't do shit to me. Basically, he's like, and so Brahma goes, fine. So he then goes off and conquers all the heavens and the universe, defeats the gods, defeats all the everything, and he takes control of the universe. And in the process, he's a serial rapist. He likes to kidnap women, rape them, which is found to be disgusting in Hindu sentiment around that.
Pretty universal thing, I would say.
Yeah. So he's cursed by one of the ladies that he tries to rape, that the next woman he touches without her permission, his head will blow up. He'll die. So he then later on gets super attracted to Rama's wife, who is also they've been exiled in the forest, and kidnaps her. He can't touch her, so he technically he does touch her. He grabs her and throws her on his chariot, and his flying chariot, and goes off. And the story is about Rama trying to get her back and how he does so. So the book, right?
So it's kind of
that's where it is a love story, but it's also a story of Dharma, because it's about how he goes to get her, how he does it, the vows he holds, what he holds to be dear, what Dharma is, and the idea that to be righteous you have to sacrifice.
But
yourself.
What's interesting about this whole story is it's the supreme being, the trimergent God, Krishna, but he's in this new incarnation called Rama.
Yeah,
so he comes to Earth as a different being, but it's like in the Christians, to make a Christian analogy, it's like Jesus coming to earth. He is Yahweh in a new form.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that they copy Christians. It's the other way around. This idea was already being implemented by the Vedic tradition.
Yeah, but it's. I think all traditions had that concept, right? Like gods would come down in human form. The Greeks did it.
Right, but
Romans.
Zeus is Zeus still. He doesn't come down as.
That's true. That's true.
No, he's still Jupiter. So, you know.
Yeah. So in this sense, Rama is unlike Krishna. I mean, both of them in the tradition are avatars of Vishnu. So they have different personalities. Rama is more stoic. He is what we would call a Raja Rishi, or a warrior priest, or warrior.
Like Drona.
Like Drona's not. He's actually the exact opposite in the way he behaves.
Drona was a warrior and a sage.
No, yeah, but he is in name only. Rama is born as a king, but he lives a lifestyle like a person that's dedicated to Dharma, and so it's very. He's known as the personification of Dharma on earth. So that's one of the reasons he's worshipped. But yeah, it's this idea of Rama is so different from Krishna. Rama doesn't lie; he won't cheat, and when he does, he gets lambasted. Krishna does everything under the sun to win the Mahabharata war for the Pandavas, and Rama is like a true stoic king warrior.
Yeah,
in that sense.
What is this now? This is the 10
the
different avatars of Vishnu that he came in?
Yeah, so this is a later tradition. Okay. It is it starts from the fish, tortoise, boar, dwarf, and then it is a dwarf, and then it's Parashurama, which is like a warrior that's born in a Brahmin family, and then there's Rama, then Balarama, Krishna, and then Kalki. Yeah.
Oh, they're not playing around. Look at there's the fish god. There's this one.
It's all Vishnu, right? So yeah. So Narsimha is the man lion.
Which one's Krishna?
Krishna is no, that is Rama.
That's Rama.
That would be Balarama. So Krishna's in this sense, Krishna is considered to be the origin of all these beings.
Okay, so seriously.
Yeah. So different traditions hold. So this is where it gets, it gets interesting. Different traditions will say things like, "No, Krishna is the origin of Vishnu." Other ones say Vishnu is the origin of Krishna.
Buddha on here too.
Yeah, Buddha is that one right there, the one after the guy holding the plow. Yeah.
In a way, Buddhism is like analogous to Christianity coming out of Judaism.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's also later tradition when the Hindus adopt or absorb in Buddhist ideas.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think Judaism does that too.
And Buddhism, by the way, does the same thing. So
Judaism borrows from Christianity over time.
So yeah, Buddhism does the same thing. What they do is they take the story of Rama and they make it Buddhist, and that text is called Dasharatha Jataka. It's a later text, but it's actually everything's retold in the motif of Buddhist ethics and philosophy and morality.
Wow. So this is fascinating stuff right here. This is
there's not just 10, there's like 24, 36, a bunch of avatars, right?
This one has a hierarchy of them. Like there's higher and lower ones.
No, it's not higher and lower. It's just how they depict it in the temple.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a hierarchy in that sense.
Yeah. So
like for example, the Matsya avatar is very similar to the story of Noah.
Really?
Yeah. So the original version of that, or even Utnapishtim's, Epic of Gilgamesh.
Oh yeah, but then you also have the god. You also have the god Oannes.
Yeah,
literally comes in this exact. Whoa, look! It looks like what is that?
That is the Sudarshana Chakra. That is his weapon. Huh? So
wait, in Hinduism, you have not only you have swastikas, but you also have stars like this.
Yep.
What? My mind is blown right now. This is an ancient symbol.
Yeah, very ancient.
Because the symbol on the flag of Israel was only from like the 19th century.
Yeah, this goes back into the BCs or before.
The Pythagoreans had this symbol too.
Yeah, we had that for at least as long. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
So
how
they
simple-
call that the shut kona,
Yeah,
the six angles. Shut
yeah,
kona.
the Pythagoreans call it the I have it on my book over there on the but the Pythagoreans have a name for it too.
Yeah. So this represents
Hold that up.
Vishnu's weapon, the
I'll be right
chakra.
back.
Yeah. So in this story is very similar to the story with the Pishtam and or even let's say Noah. In this one, this first appears in this text called the Shatapada Brahmana, which is part of the Vedas. And in this, Manu, who is the man, the first man, as you want to call her, or Manu also connects to the word Manava, which means man, maybe similar to like Adam or something. So Manu, who is this pious person, finds this tiny fish in his kamandalu, or his little, like his jar, and the fish says, "Oh, please put me into another jar. There's or I'll be killed by the animals in the water." So he puts him in a bigger jar, and the fish gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually, he puts the fish into the ocean, and the fish says to him, "I am Prajapati. I am the Lord of all beings. There's going to be a deluge coming soon, and you must gather all animals and whatever onto your raft, and it'll come to you." So the raft comes eventually. The waters come, animals, humans, all put onto the raft, and the fish comes back, which now a horn on the head, and it ties the raft to it through the deluge, and steers it to a mountaintop, in which Manu then is able to restart the mankind. So it's similar, right?
Yeah,
And that's
oh, that was great. By the way, I was going to say the Pythagoreans were into geometry. Obviously, everyone knows that.
Yeah.
And they have very similar symbols that you find that you just mentioned. There's the pentagram called the pentad, and then if you look up there on the bottom or in the middle, the hexad.
Yeah.
And it appears to look like one of the Star of David symbols. Obviously, I'm using that word anachronistically.
Yeah.
The Star of David. That's what it's called later. But that symbol you can actually find in Byzantine, not Byzantine. I don't know if it was 2nd century CE. I think it was Roman occupied Judea in the Caesarea Philippi.
Yeah.
I found that symbol. I saw that when I was there, and I was like asked. I was there with a couple scholars. I was like, wait a minute. I thought you said this symbol until like the 20th century. They're like, yeah, that's true. I'm like, well, why is it sitting right there? I'm like, we're in Israel. It's right there. It says 2nd century. They're like, oh, that's just like the Pythagorean Roman that did that. Like, what? It was a Gentile. It was a pagan symbol that I found in Israel. It was the star. So
these symbols are used a lot in Tantra and various forms of worship, right? So there's also the worship of numbers and angles as sacred mystical symbols. So like in my prayer section here, I have that exact thing, the hexagram as they call it, but we call it Shatkoda, and it represents the top triangle, like this way, represents the male principle. This one's female principle. They're joined together. The center is the Bindu, which is all of creation. So the merger of man and woman as the divine couple creates all of creation.
Wow. And it's funny because you said that in here, in this is the Pythagorean source book. It's got a bunch of primary sources in here. Kenneth Guthrie put it together, one of the great scholars, one of the great classicists. Anyways, it means justice. It means Poseidon's wife. It means marriage, peace, far shooting of Apollo, the cosmos, wholeness, perfection, health. It's a symbol that means a couple of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, but symbols don't generally have one meaning. There's multiple meanings, right?
Exactly. There's multiple meanings, and they're used in different contexts and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you'll find so many of these symbols that are like the swastika, right? Is found all over the world. We just call it swastika because that's the word that we've connected to it. But it used to be called by the Germans the Hakenkreuz, and then like I think the other traditions call it something else. But swastika is pretty ubiquitous.
Yeah. I wanted to this is all fascinating. There's so much we can get into. I wanted to pull up one of the passages from Alexander traveling to India, and I was actually able to find one from this. I just wanted to give people a little glimpse into like what kind of thing, what happened when they met. And it says right here, after these events, Alexander made an expedition to the Oxkudrake, not because they were bellicose, but because they were gymnosophists, which means naked philosophers, who inhabited caves and thickets. They wrote a letter to him. We, the Brahmans, write to Alexander, the human being, which is like a weird way to say Brahmin. Yeah. If you come to us, go ahead.
No, I was saying because the word is Brahman, right? So the aspiration might become ka in Greek, which is
I was going to say I can find it right here. Here it is, right here. Brahmanes.
Yeah.
It's because the he symbol or so it's hard to make that noise. So it's Brahmanes or Brahmanes.
Yeah.
You know. Anyways, write to Alexander, the human being. If you come to us in an act of war, you will benefit in no way, for you will be able to carry nothing away from us. But if you want what we have, there is no reason to fit for. I think they meant fight.
I think it's fight. Yeah.
For it is your nature to war, ours to philosophize. Now imagine telling the Greeks that. The Greeks are known as the philosophers, but it's the Indians telling the Greeks, you guys are warriors, we're philosophers. So Alexander, after he read this, went to them in peace and saw that all of them were half naked. So he asked, don't you live in tombs? And they responded, this is a place we inhabit, and it is ours. And turning to one another, he asked, who are greater in number, the living or the dead? They answered, the dead are more numerous, but do not measure those who are no longer. For those who are seen outnumber those who no longer appear. Then he inquired of another, what is stronger, death or life? And he answered, life, because the rising sun has stronger rays, but as it sets, it is much weaker. This is a strange little story. I mean, it's got a little wisdom in there, and it makes you wonder, is this really what the Brahmins would say? What do you think about this?
I think they might have mistaken the ascetics for the Brahmins. It sounds more like a saying of the ascetics.
And this would be in Buddhist times. This would be 300
so
century BC. These might have been Buddhists.
It could have been, it could have been Buddhists. It could have been Jains. It could have been Ajivikas or even other ascetic groups. There were tons, right? There were just people that had left their families and probably if they're living together like that, they're probably ascetics. They're probably not like the Brahmins in the cities or whatever ashrams. It's actually
that lines up with their sort of wisdom that they would say something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it seems very similar to that, right? Because we don't war, we philosophize. It seems very much what ascetics would do.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else we want to get into. Got about a half an hour left. Is that cool with you? About a half an hour?
Yeah, dude, I got all the time you need. I'm chilling.
Let's see. What other great? So we mentioned the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, the Upanishads. What else? What other big texts are we missing?
Oh, I mean, the Upanishads are part of the Vedas, right? So they're more esoteric, and this is where you get into the deeper philosophies that people will talk about. For example, like monism or dualism, or the idea that Brahman and Atman are one. Those kind of things are found in the Upanishads, right? Where they deeply discuss the nature of the self and consciousness, right? I mean, if you want to get the philosophical aspect, this is where the big difference between I think the West and the East comes. Is the self in the West is connected to the mind, some sort of conscious thought, the ability to think and reason, while the self in the East is not. It's pure experience. It's just pure consciousness. That which it experiences is the self, right? It doesn't have any thought to it. It doesn't have any mind to it. Those are all, let's say, sheaths that it envelops it. At its very core, the self is pure consciousness and experience. So the Upanishads talk about that. and they spend a lot of time on that.
And
Yeah.
do any of those go back pretty far? Like, what do you think?
Oh
about
yeah,
yeah, those are
Yeah,
pretty old. Huh?
those, again, this is, most scholars place them between the primary Upanishad, somewhere between the 12th century BCE to about 6th century BCE, roughly before the Buddha and around the time of the Buddha. And some of these texts are before Buddha, some of them are around the time of Buddha. So it's like, for example, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana both don't indicate knowledge of Buddhism. There's not a mention of Buddhism. So that's another reason why.
And when does Buddhism come around? Like 500 BC, something like that?
600 roughly. Yeah. I mean, again, so the one big problem in the Indian world is dating of anything is deeply problematic. So we can say probably the outer date of the latest text could be. We cannot say the earlier part. It's almost impossible.
I'm trying to think. So where does the Buddhist tradition split from the Vedic Hinduism tradition? Where do they separate? Like, I know they're not this. Obviously, they have a lot in common. Obviously, they have a lot of sources in common.
Yeah.
Where do they separate? Because it's like Christianity is not the same as Judaism. They have you can point to a lot of differences. What about how would you separate Buddhism from traditional Hinduism?
So early Buddhism, let's say the writings of, or the sayings of Buddha himself. Buddha, we don't have too many sayings. We know he probably said 4 things for sure. The 4 statements is, the cause of all suffering is desire. He's silent on the nature of Atma, whether it exists or doesn't exist. He's silent on the nature of the world, whether it comes into being.
Is that what he means?
Atma can mean soul or self. Better say self. Soul has too much baggage.
What does he say exactly about that? That's interesting. What does he say? It does exist or not?
He doesn't answer that question.
Really?
When they asked, he says, it's not something I'll speak about.
That's kind of fascinating. I'm not gonna
which
lie.
is why in the Buddhist schools, you have schools that arise that talk about a self arising, and other ones that say there is no self, or all things are the self, like Sarvastivada. So what I would say is the major differences would be that most Buddhists hold to the view that there is no true self, ultimate self. There is no objective world as we understand it. It's conceptions of the mind, meaning it's either conceptive language or of the mind. Like when I say there's a tree here, the tree I'm referring to is a concept that's demarcated by language. And what they're saying is, what does that tree mean? And when you break it down, is there a tree there? When you break it down, the words don't express reality. So therefore, the words, the conceptual framework, doesn't give us any reality. Reality is merely that which you experience, which is devoid of nature, of its own nature. It's all contingent. Everything is contingent. There's no independent thing. So they don't generally adhere to some sort of deity of ultimate power or creation. They do have, some of the traditions have what's known as the Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbha, which is the nature of almost like Brahmanic, like the nature of Brahman, like the supreme one, but they put it in negative terms. So everything is what's that word? Negative theology. Everything is said in negative.
Negation.
Negation. Everything is negated.
This is what the Platonists and Pythagoreans do. There's a famous passage from one of the Middle Platonists, Alcinous, actually, I think it is. It's like 2nd century BC or something like that, or 2nd century AD. I'm sorry. And he says the only way we can actually figure out what the good is, the God, like the one, the good, is by negation, by discarding what we know is not good. We can get to what is good. So it's like jealousy, bad; anger, bad; dishonesty, bad. All that stuff, and you negate, and what you're left with is the idea of what the divine is. Scientific way to come at it like that.
Yeah, so the Buddhist tradition was doing something similar. I mean, the difference would be the Buddhist tradition ultimately says there is no self, there is no God. It's all a sense of cause and effect all the way down. There is no original cause, it's just desire. So this idea of extinguishing the self, what they mean by that is that once you free yourself from desire, the self no longer exists and you enter into nothingness. Nothingness here.
Socrates would say in one of Plato's dialogues.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
It's really, I mean, that's like something like symposium right there.
Yeah. I mean,
everything is desire. Everything is eros, you know?
Yeah. So, but desire is the cause of suffering. So his first thing is all existence is suffering in the sense. So the Buddhists have a very negative understanding or engagement with the world. The Vedic tradition is very positive. Like, we're here to do something, you do it in the world is affirmed, the world is real, it should be engaged with. The Buddhist is the exact opposite. Buddhist is saying the world should not be engaged with because the world itself is a source of suffering. So, which is why the Buddhist tradition, on the whole, is only meant for ascetics, what they call the Sangha. So, salvation was not open for regular people because you had to become an ascetic. You had to give up all things in order to get this. It's almost like
escape reincarnation. You had to become a saint. Yeah,
it's very close to Heraclitus.
Well, that's a good point too. But also the Gnostic salvation was like hard. You got to attain apotheosis. You got to do all these things. You got to be really smart. You got to learn all these languages. You got to learn geometry. You got to learn math. That's how you get salvation in Gnosticism. And whereas the Christians were like, no, you can just have faith. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, so
you had the same kind of problem in the East like this.
Well, I mean, you do have that. So in both traditions, both Buddhist and Hindu tradition, because Buddhism overall evolves to become more and more like Hinduism in some sense. So, for example, originally Buddhism wasn't very ritualistic, but over time, to compete in this market, you have rituals that come up, right? So Buddhists start doing rituals. They do yagyas. Why would you do yagyas if you don't believe in the efficacy of them? You do them because they're part of it builds people want to join because they want that engagement. Buddhism starts then having tantra becomes part of it. Then Buddhism, which historically doesn't engage in sex, but Vajrayana traditions is open to sex, open to drugs, open to alcohol, open to these esoteric practices. Gods, where do gods arise? If all things is nothing, why do you pray to any god? Suddenly gods take a bigger role. So, so the Buddhism and Hinduism are trading with each other, and Jainism's there too, and they're having these conversations, but they're taking the good with each other. So, like some of the concepts the Buddhists bring in, some people say that Shankaracharya in the 7th century, this Advaita Vedanta demonism is partially Buddhist. Buddhist concepts come in. So these ideas play out across the entire subcontinent, where it's intellectual engagement of ideas. And you don't find much violence, to be frank, around any sort of religious violence around this stuff.
Yeah, and so there's a good super chat that I want to ask you about. Well, it's just a super chat that I saw. But before I get to the super chat, I wanted to ask you. One of the things that I noticed was this need for action for example, the Bhagavad Gita. Action is good. You got to do what you're told. You're supposed to go to war. You're supposed to do this. Whereas in what I get from the Buddha, from what I've read, almost like inaction is better than action.
So his position is worldly action is not good. Ascetic action is good. Meaning, like, for example, to cultivate, in regular people, he wants them to cultivate the dhammas, the good dharmas, right? Like things like nonviolence, compassion, truth telling. Basically, everything that exists in the Yoga Sutras exists in the Buddhist tradition. So he puts that. But what he wants is the ascetic element also to be case is this focus on meditation. Of what we now get is things like silence or vipassana or the metta meditation, where you go from silence to focusing on deep compassion for all beings, which is a concept of bodhisattva. I'm sure you've heard the bodhisattva concept, which is the monk who is at the precipice of salvation, stops himself so he can hold the door open for everyone else. So he comes back and takes birth to help people out. So these ideas are built into the Buddhist tradition too over time, right? So I would say that it isn't saying don't act, it's just saying act in this way. Whereas the Hindu tradition is saying depends on what you desire, you act in certain ways. So if you so in the Hindu tradition, there's four goals or aims or means of life. There's dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma is righteousness, artha is wealth, kama is desire, and then last is moksha. So if you want a life of desire, you do certain things to get that. If you want a life of power and money, you do certain things to get that. And there's nothing wrong with having those things. Now, if the Hindu version is going to say dharma shouldn't regulate at all. So you should go after power, but do so in the right way. You should go after wealth, do so in the right way. Buddhism is saying don't do any of that shit. It's saying do the ascetic stuff and free yourself from this entire problem of existence. Existence to them is a bad thing.
Yeah. Somebody asked, is the Buddha Chinese or Indian, and why is he venerated in China? This is actually an interesting question. How does he get so big in China?
So this is actually fascinating. So Buddha is either by modern standards Nepalese or Indian. It's somewhere in that region near the Himalayas.
Right.
Yeah. And so what happens is roughly around the beginning of the Common Era. I mean, well, actually, after Buddha dies, Buddhism starts spreading. It's a missionary proselytizing religion from the very get-go.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So it ends up going into places like, Afghanistan, where you get the Gandharan type of art that merged between the Greek and the Indian art. And you also have a lot of Buddhists are like, for example, the King Meander, and he has a conversation with Nagasena, which is in the Pali canon, about the chariot and the wheels and all this stuff. What is the chariot? So that's a very huge, well-known text. So it goes into Afghanistan, then it goes into the steppe region, and then starts moving to China. And when it gets to China, what happens roughly around the 6th, 7th century CE, a lot of Chinese monks start coming back to India because they want to get the original Buddhist texts. And when they get the original Buddhist texts, they take it back to China, and they start translating it, and these various monasteries start arising. And in the arising of those monasteries, they align themselves with the political power establishment and grow and grow and grow. They absorb in elements of Taoism, of Confucianism into their tradition, and then they become the state religion. And this is like, for example, like one of the most famous books, The Journey to the West, is very much
what it reminds
about.
Me?
Yeah,
it reminds me of how Christianity starts off as a Jewish religion.
Yeah,
it comes out of Judaism, in Judea, but it mostly spreads in Rome, the Roman Empire, becomes a Roman religion.
Yeah,
but in the East, analogous to the Roman Empire is the Han Dynasty in many ways.
Yeah.
If you look at the Han Dynasty, their lifespan, roughly 200 BC to 200 AD. Which, if you look at the Roman Republic to Empire, their glory days is like 200 BC by the time they defeat Carthage to around 200 AD at the end of the great emperors. By the time you get to Commodus, it's pretty much downhill from there. So like the Han the Han Dynasty and the Roman Empire have a similar lifespan, but in the same way, they adopt their religion from the more ancient cultures that are, I shouldn't say more ancient culture, from this other cultures that are around them. And like they adopt, in the East, they adopt Buddhism, which comes out of Hinduism. In the West, they adopt Christianity, which comes out of Judaism. They very much mirror each other in this weird way. I almost want to find out there's an evolutionary thing behind that makes it look so similar.
Yeah, I mean, well, they both are religions of empire. So,
sure.
So Buddhism, like it rose.
They're both made for spreading. Yeah.
Yeah, it rose first in.
Whereas Hinduism and Judaism aren't like that. They're more like for genetics and people living in one spot.
Yeah, they're much more tied to Hinduism becomes a little more missionary later, but not really, and that's only through merchants. But Buddhism, like especially with Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE, 2nd, 3rd century, he started really pushing Buddhism. That's when it really got big. So, as far as in Aramaic, you'll find the Ashokan edicts written in Aramaic about Buddhism. So that's like, I guess 250 BCE. And so you find it, he has these edicts written all around the known world at that time and spreading Buddhism, but the Dharma. It's actually very fascinating. The Buddhism really went forth with Ashoka.
You know who else made this exact same point as you is Alan Watts.
Yeah,
Alan
sure.
Watts has a discussion where he talks about how Judaism, like Hinduism, was meant for like a specific culture in a specific place. And then they both give birth to these other traditions that are meant to reach out and become evangelical, like Buddhism does and Christianity does.
Right.
Almost a very similar concept going on.
Yeah, so Hinduism is interesting because ultimately, like, even though there are elements clearly of proselytization, but it's not a requirement, right? It's not something that people feel the need to do. It happens. Like you do find like Southeast Asia, all of Southeast Asia, you can't get to become Hindu or Buddhist without having some level of proselytization going on. Merchants come over, they bring these stories, they bring these maybe a couple priests, and the local people are like, because it's connected to power, or maybe like wealth, like this is really cool. Let's bring more of these people over, and these other people, they bring more of them over, and it grows and grows and grows. But no one's going out and having missions, say convert. There's none of that.
Yeah.
And Buddhism doesn't do that either. So there's no sense of state power is very, very rarely used in the Eastern religions to ever make anyone convert.
Yeah.
And in fact, in most of Buddhist Hindu kingdoms, they would actually support each other's religions. Like a Buddhist king might give money to build Hindu temples and Hindu places, and Hindu king does the same for Buddhists. So you find a lot of that interaction going on from very early and late stages. Speaking
of China, now this gets into Taoism because that's their sort of like their homemade religion is Taoism. But I've read an article, I actually pulled it up. There was an article about how you can even find Vedic concepts in Taoism. Are you familiar with this, or what do you think about? You think no? I've heard people say nah.
I don't think so.
This is an academic article, and it says if you look at
the author is
authentic Vedic definition of the way, and they make a pretty decent argument that this idea of the ways can be found in Vedic sources. Yeah, but like every tradition has the way. I was just going to say the Greeks have the Odon, and the Christians the same way. Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, it might just be some sort of universal things that they're finding here. Yeah, but or maybe but again, we have to look. The problem with some of this is like people take all the texts and then start making connections. No, you have to look at like, okay, what are the oldest texts that talk about this particular thing? Do they mention it in other texts? I mean, you got to be a little more critical how you're doing it. Like, if I can bring modern Taoist texts and say, look, there's this concept here from ancient India, but when do they actually interact? Right. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought I'm open to universal like truths. Yeah, of course. I just feel like we have to be a little more like critical in how we think about that, because I think it's like the work you do. It's like, yeah, you postulate, hey, maybe they come from the same source, or maybe they're different traditions. I mean, we just don't know yet. I mean, and sometimes they just talk about similar things. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fascinating to explore this kind of stuff, but yeah, I think. Oh, I love it. I love it. I think you do have to take a step back and go, wait a minute, you don't know if this is the exact same thing. Yeah, it's like people that be like, oh yeah, Abraham is connected to Brahma. Abraham's married to Sarah. Brahma's married to Saraswati. Oh, there's these connections, and you're like, okay, I mean, Brahma means Abraham, yeah. Saraswati is Sarah, Sarai, and then you look at the Hebrew, and they don't match up anymore. No, they don't. And it looks cool. Then when you compare Sanskrit to the Hebrew, all of a sudden it's like doesn't look the same anymore. No, and they're different concepts too, and how they, the critical nature of like engaging with scholarship is so important to have that nuance. Yeah, and that's why I try to do on my channel. I try to explore these topics, but without having to lose our minds and go into areas that just don't make sense. No, which I love. Yeah. By the way, before we get out of here, I do want to shout your channel out and give you a couple minutes to discuss what you. Here's me. I was on your channel not too long ago.
Yeah.
That was a good conversation. If anyone hasn't saw this yet, check this out. Links in the description right now on this video. So if you just click on the description of this video, you'll see the links to this channel. Go and check it out. Hit the subscribe button. I'm subscribed. In the last 5 minutes, what do you got going on? What's your plans?
Yeah, so on the channel, I do a mixture of focusing on the Eastern traditions, and I also talk about Christianity and Islam. So I had a recent podcast with Dr. Gabriel Said Reynolds around the Quranic concept of God, and as opposed to hadiths and other later traditions, and that's interesting. So I'm going to have a conversation maybe this week or next week with Dr. Khalil Andani about the Neoplatonic Ismaili religion of Ismailis, because they're Neoplatonic, and how they took the Neoplatonic ideas and put them into Islam, and how does that occur? Yeah. Wow. So that's gonna be interesting. And then I'm gonna have some people on about talking about the origins of Vedas and Sanskrit grammar as being really, really fascinating, how language is understood in the Sanskrit world, because it's unique, especially the level of depth that the grammarians had was not matched until roughly the 19th, 20th century with Frege, and then Chomsky and generative grammar. So I think it's one of the coolest things around. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm doing that stuff. And, I hope to have Derek on at some point. We've been, I came on his stream a couple times and we talked for a minute, but I'm sure he's busy.
I think after Derek sees this and how knowledgeable you are of this stuff, I think he's going to be jumping on there pretty quick to get you on here.
Dude, this is the thing. It's like there's this ecosystem of you, Derek, and a few other, like History Valley, and
oh my God, History Valley's been killing it lately.
Yeah, and it's like I go to you guys to hear good stuff coming out, because a lot of people don't have it, and you have, and you opened me up to Professor Litwa and Dennis McDonald and all these cool guys that are like showing deeper. Because it's still fascinating how for centuries no one thought about looking at Greek epics, Greek history and culture and language, and connecting to Christianity. Like they just it rose up.
Taboo. It was always like, don't go. This is no. These are evil pagans. Don't look here. Right. And finally, the floodgates are opened, and everyone's starting to go, "Whoa, what the hell?"
Yeah, and then the fact that I mean, if you're a Christian, believe and do your thing, but be honest about this. Like the concept of Hades coming. I mean, where does that come from?
It's right in their Bible. It says Hades right there.
Yeah. I mean, where do you think that comes from?
They couldn't think of a better word in Greek, so they use Hades because it's familiar.
Right. And some of this stuff is just like, you can't, in some sense, you can't just, especially if you want to do scholarship and be honest, intellectual, you can't separate the world where things arise and are interacting with from the ideas that come from. Now, if you want to believe in the truth of Jesus, go ahead and do that, but don't make these claims that it's not untouched. It's untouched from these other traditions, when it's just like,
that's interesting about when you research India and you see all the traditions, Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and you compare and contrast them because they're all from the same region.
Yeah.
And what's so weird about when you study Asia Minor, Greece, Judea, that's all the same region. It's Mediterranean. Yeah. We're talking Mediterranean, Near Eastern, Asia Minor, Egypt. This is all the same region. Why shouldn't we compare and contrast them? They're all trading with each other. Why are we putting a force field around this one place and acting like they have nothing to do with all these other places that all are interacting with each other? It's weird. And you would never do that in India. So why are we doing that in the Mediterranean?
It's special pleading.
This place is special. This book is special. So therefore, don't mess with it. That's what it comes down to.
But the same happens with Islam too, right? When you start talking to Muslims about this stuff, it's the same issues occur. Is somehow this text is sitting magically away in a land where time is untouched by it, people untouched, it just magically appears. And you're like, okay, can you admit, I mean, you could say it's divinely inspired, but can you admit it comes up with concepts that come from that time period? I mean,
exactly.
I feel like,
there's a way to be nuanced and have both, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, like, and I'm a practicing Hindu, but I'm also like someone that's, I belong to a particular tradition. I belong to a Vaishnavite tradition. Vishnu is my supreme deity I worship, and Krishna and stuff. And I have, that, but I also can be like, yeah, I think the Vedas are in some sense revealed, but
your critical hat on if you need to.
yeah, but it like, even like, I say this to people, even if Krishna and Rama doesn't exist, it changes nothing to me about the truth of what's happening in these texts.
That's what I love about these quote unquote pagan traditions, is it's not about the actual physical truth of did this actually happen. It's about the deeper meanings behind these texts that really matter, that are true.
Right. It's the equivalent of asking, like, is my feeling of love more real than the chair in front of me? And you're like, they're real. They're both real. I mean, comparing the two is like weird. So these stories that are told in people's minds are real. There's something to it.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
But anyways, this has been a great time, and I hope everyone loved this. And definitely, we'll do this again soon.
Yeah,
and
man.
You have just attained.
No, thank you. True gnosis.
You have just attained true gnosis. The demiurge has no power over